Good evening. My name is Rob Holmes. Uh, I was in the Marine Corps for 23 years and retired, and now I work for basically the VFW for the state as a quartermaster currently.
That's pretty awesome. So, Rob, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you did in the Marine Corps, when you joined, some duty stations. Just give a little background about just yourself.
All right, I'll warn the audience, I am old. So, at least not older than most or too many, but I joined the Marine Corps in 1994. I know that's a pretty long time ago. I know, man, it's hilarious. The longer you stay in the military,
Yeah.
and you start going to balls,
Yeah.
and you have Marines that are like born when you were in like high school,
We were both eating crayons at the same time.
pretty much, right?
You were doing it in the Marine Corps, and I was doing it as a little kid.
You were doing it for real.
Yeah.
So yeah, 1994. I enlisted as an O3, an infantryman, rifleman to start out, and then from there I just most of my career I was an infantryman, but I was just different places.
Hmm.
So
Are you Hollywood or Parris Island?
I'm Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Me
yeah.
too.
Prefer the
Yeah.
sunglasses.
Yeah, Hollywood as well. For those don't know, there's Marine Corps Recruit Depot San Diego, which is on the west coast, and then the east coast, which is Parris Island.
Parris Island.
And there's always a big kind of feud between Marines themselves. Like who went to one, because like on the west coast we have all the hills and the mountains, and then on the east coast they have the sand fleas. So everybody's kind of like, well, yeah, you guys got to go to baseball games, and yeah, but you guys got to do hikes on or humps on flat ground, So
Right.
there's always a little bit of
Oh man, look at those websites, man.
Yeah.
So if you go on Facebook, they are pretty bad about the rivalry that goes on between the two.
yeah. I don't know. We're having camera issues, so you'll probably see this kind of like cut up. Might put something in between to get like, I don't know. Oh yeah,
And
that's
you
right.
might see the alternate camera.
Yeah, you might
If
see.
this keeps doing this.
Yeah, we have two cameras going on. We have one that does a 360 of the room, and then one kind of an overshot. So
Yeah, the 360's being a pain today.
yeah,
Doesn't want to play too much. But yeah, there's a huge rivalry. It goes back and forth.
Yeah. It's good times.
It's great either way. It's like having other services. If you have another service member from another service, you put two of us together. We're gonna have fun with the guy from another service, regardless. I mean, it's
Yeah.
all good fun.
Exactly. Yeah. So 94.
Oh yes, 94. Not much was going on back then, but at the time, I just jumped into it. Thought it would be good to something to do. My father was prior military, so he was in the Navy for 23. SEAL teams and all that cool stuff. And,
Yeah.
as a kid, I wanted to do that too. So here's a funny story. When I was going to enlist, I wanted to be a corpsman.
Yeah.
And, okay, so the medical people, they're all Navy, and we don't have any in the Marine Corps. So I went to become a corpsman.
Yeah.
And my uncle went with me. He's a former Navy Air Force, and they're both cops after that too. So they got that long career of different things. So my uncle went with me, and I told him what I wanted to be, and then I think the first time I took the ASVAB, I had a little bit of a rough time doing it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man. So I passed it, but I was like, I wasn't happy with that. I could have done better. The environment wasn't that great. So, but my uncle was like, well, and the recruiter just wanted me to go in.
Yeah.
And it pretty much tried to open contract me
Mm-hmm.
in the Navy, and I was like, and he's like, no, I was Navy, not happening.
Yeah.
And it was great. I had him there, and he was like, you're not having my nephew scrub bird shit off the side of the ship. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So, so at that point, I just like, well, let me reevaluate this. So I went into the Marine office right after that. I figured if you can't heal people, let's kill people, right? So the other alternate was to become an infantryman. So I walked in there and I told him, hey, I want to be an infantryman. And then of course I retake the test at MEPS,
Yeah.
and that time I was I think a 59 or 60 on it. And then so if you're over 50, you're good. So you pretty much do anything at that point. And
Yeah.
I just said, I'm gonna be infantry, and I did that.
Yeah.
So
I had a similar thing when I was going to join. I was all set to go in the army. I was working 2 jobs and going to college, and I was like, "There's got to be something easier than this." So my father was in the Marine Corps, and so he was like, "Yeah, we'll take you down to the office," and I was like, "Cool." I went to the Air Force. I was like, not for me. I went to the Navy. I was like, not really. I went in the Army, and I was like, they sold me on everything, and I was like, "That's cool. Like I'm ready to be all I can be," And he was like, "Well, wait, before you sign anything, let's go to the Marines, the office." I walked in there, and they started doing their thing, and then they asked my father if he was prior service. He's like, "Yeah, I was in the Marine Corps," and then it was what got me was they were like, "Oh, that's so cool." They sat me down on a couch.
Yep.
They put on a tape, and then they talked to my dad and asked him about his Marine Corps service, and I was sitting there and I was like, I looked and I was like, that's what I want. Like, they're ignoring me, wanting to go in because they want to talk to my dad about like stuff that he did in the Marine Corps, and I was like, that's the kind of camaraderie and stuff.
You.
Yeah, and that's how I was like, you know what, this is for me right here.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty wild. Yeah, so same idea, and we all had that the idea of getting out there and being sexy and being dangerous, and,
yeah.
Doing the whole war fighting thing. So it's a good experience. I mean, one way or the other. I think that I've never traded my experience for anything else. I mean, if they would let me go back in, transfer service, do something, I would have stayed in.
Yeah.
But I thought it was time to roll after 23. I could have done at least one more year.
Yeah.
And tried to play when you get up to the real high ranks, because I retired Master Sergeant, which is an E8. That's the enlisted side. So I was possibly, you could maybe hope that you get that next rank up.
Yeah.
But an E9 is pretty tough because that circle's small.
Yeah.
So as you start to get that pyramid, it's like it's the tiniest in terms of, the most qualified. You're gonna be like competition against each other, and hopefully you get it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to play that game. I was like to the point where I'm like, you know what, and you know how the saying goes. What they say about retirement is anything after 20, you're basically working for half.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of true because you get the retirement.
Yeah.
But then if you have another job, that's where your other income is coming from, and then you're only working for half at that point. But what's funny about I guess what's cool is like everybody sees the war movies and they see all these movies that come out, but it's funny when you actually live the Marine, being a Marine and being part of something and the real story.
Right.
So a good example of it, 2009, I was on the 13th MU.
Okay.
That's the Marine Expeditionary Unit, where all the Marines and Navy, they go out together and you're traveling, right? Well, we ended up being the ones that rescued Captain Phillips. So when I watched that movie, Captain Phillips, there's so much detail left out of it.
Yeah.
It's not like the movie. It's not like they. Don't get me wrong. Nothing but high respect for those SEALs. Shooting that sniper rifle at
It's crazy.
the boat, right?
Yeah.
That thing was rocking in high seas.
Yeah.
My ship was the one they were supposed to actually take the shot off of. You can still find it in Wiki and all that, those kind of search things. But we were on our way to relieve them, and what the movie didn't show too was it wasn't the Bonham Rashad, which was the wrong ship, and they actually showed the carrier, which was the Essex, and that was the correct ship.
Mm-hmm.
But they had the Bonham Rashad supposedly, and it was funny because that ship broke down more times on that deployment than anything. Like it was like dead in the water for the longest time.
Yeah.
And so it finally caught up to us. We're going out to relieve them because they've been at sea for like 90 days. We went out to go relieve them, and the hilarious thing was, as we're going to the Suez Canal, we actually hit a submarine, U.S. sub, surfers right in front of the ship, middle of the night, and I remember getting woken up, and we could feel the jolt.
Yeah.
Because it hit the bottom. It actually hit the keel on the bottom, which balances out the ship. So, the ballast. I'm sorry, the ballast. It's still part of the keel, but it hit the ballast and actually punctured the ballast, and then actually it did enough damage to where we lost like 15,000 gallons of diesel in the Suez Canal.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it was
It's
crazy.
crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy. And then so what ended up happening after that, of course, we were about 6 inches. If it had struck any harder,
Mhm.
and that ballast, it would have actually filled up, and the ship would actually sank.
Oh wow.
So we lucked out on that one, and
Yeah.
we listed all the way back to Monterey, and that's where we ended up finishing our deployment. So
Yeah.
everybody that's stuck out there, they ended up getting stuck out there longer on the I believe it was the Essex. It was one of the carrier ships, but
Mhm.
so in that movie, most people didn't know that. Why we were actually let's see, I believe it was right after that they were actually thinking about having us go out and do the rescue if the SEALs hadn't done it. This is what kind of upsets, and this is where the story does not come out in the movie.
Yeah.
So we had my cat platoon, that's a combined anti-armor team. So we had the Humvees with all the big mounted guns. So we had those on the what's called the LCAC, which is the big giant hovercraft, right? So they gave us a mission. We sat on those, fully geared up, because they were going to have us go into the village where all of those I guess you won't count terrorists, where the terrorists were from, to go in case the event that we had to go rescue Cat Phillips.
Mhm.
And they want us to go when they're full blazing. We had to, right? They think it was going to be like another Somalia. So yeah, we sat there for hours and hours, and then finally they stood us down, and it made us mad because we went back up there. We were sweating because have you ever been down in the well decks waiting to go anywhere? Just hot and humid, and
Funk.
there's no air.
Yeah.
There's no air that runs moves in that. So you're sitting there, and you're sitting in full flak jackets and with your sappy plates in, and your bulletproof plates, and just unhappy. And these guys came over, and this is what killed us. So we took all our gear off, and we're sitting up in our berthing areas, and the captain of the ship comes over. Actually, it's the captain of the fleet. They actually could talk to each other, over the 1MC.
Yeah.
So he addressed the whole fleet, and he came over and he goes, "Hey, just so you know, we're kind of tired of Marines getting all the credit.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna call for a SEAL team, and they waited like a day for the SEAL team to show up.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna let the SEAL team have it. And we're like, oh man, are you serious? Why even put us in the well deck?
Yeah.
You're gonna do something like that. But that's what ended up happening. Kind of interesting part of things, that backstory that people don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's more interesting than the actual combat and stuff like that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, Hollywood does a lot of stuff in movies to make it more suspenseful.
Oh
Like just everything that they base on natural stuff, events is very. You take it with a grain of salt because
yeah. Right.
somebody tells a story, but then Hollywood adds extra stuff like people dying that didn't die,
Right.
or events that didn't happen, or if they were like small, short little bursts of combat, they drag it out for 15 minutes. When it only took a minute.
Right.
And a half,
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
The best one I've seen where they actually tell like a pretty accurate type story is Generation Kill.
Oh, they did a good job on that.
Yeah,
Oh,
like watching it and actually being deployed to places, like that they show and stuff like that, and stuff
Right.
that they do and everything, and going through that myself, it's kind of like, and you too,
Oh,
like
Oh,
you
yeah.
look at it and you're like, I've done that,
It's-
like that's
But the reason why it's so interesting too
Yeah.
is because it doesn't just focus on the war, like war movies. When you just focus on the war
Yeah.
movie, okay, I get it. For Saving Private Ryan, oh, absolutely, very interesting. But when you can
Good
get
movie,
the real
yeah.
down and dirty,
Yeah.
and you get to see the people's real personalities and
Yeah.
the misery that they had to go through
Yeah.
because people just making these crazy decisions, and
Mhm.
your reaction is watching the reaction of it. It just
Yeah.
completely makes that a lot more believable, especially to veterans. Because veterans, man, we just I'll tear a movie apart.
Oh yeah, I have a hard time watching a movie and being like, and just being like, oh yeah, that's all real. Like no, that doesn't happen.
Right.
Or watching it and being like just trying to feel like being in that kind of position. Like
Right.
that wouldn't fly.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Hey, I want to let everybody know. Okay, those guys that walk away from explosions, it's not real. You
Yeah.
cannot do that. I actually got caught by a backblast
Yeah.
in 2004 during the Battle of Fallujah. Day one, I was with my A gunner and 4 engineers. We're standing there, and one of the guys, either an explosion, an explosive device went off, a big, huge explosion, or a back blast came at us, threw me about 20 feet, and the rest of those guys 20 feet.
Yeah.
Right, knocked us out. I had no idea how long it was. There was no flames.
Yeah.
All I felt was it felt like a bus drove through here, and I didn't see the bus.
Yeah.
It hurt that bad. So yeah, you can't. I don't care who you are. You don't walk away from an explosion looking cool.
Yeah, it's not. It's Hollywood magic.
Yeah, and the fact you start bleeding out areas like your ears and other stuff is, another thing. So
they don't show any of that.
Nah, you don't get most of that, and they don't realize that TBI is pretty bad.
Yeah.
If you even like in the movies, you see some really bad cases with some of those explosions. But yeah, so the explosion thing may look cool in the movies, but it's not real. Don't ever think that that's gonna happen.
Yeah, definitely. So okay, so Somalia, the Somalia pirates.
Yep.
So what else?
Oh man,
what else have you done that's?
So deployment wise, I did 9 years while I was in.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, 9 deployments while I was in for a 23 year span.
Yeah.
Most of them, believe it or not, were pretty uneventful in terms of combat. I did 4 that were classified as combat. First one, I did Okinawa, and it's Okinawa every time, but I went somewhere after that.
Yeah.
So I ended up in Okinawa for my first deployment. Didn't do much in there, except play D&D. I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, all right? But I saved a lot of money on deployment thanks to that. That's why I'm very thankful for D&D, because in my group, we had like 4 or 5 guys that used to like to play, and that's all we would do. A weekend come around, we'd work during the week, do our thing, go out training or something like that, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, man, just hammering out D&D.
Yeah.
And then and it's funny because we get food, come back, and just start playing again.
Yeah.
So that was my first deployment, and we would do that. I think we did that a couple other deployments, but it broke up a little bit more. So that was 96. I want to say 98. I got to go to Fuji a little bit, so we were still doing that kind of thing, but we did that. It didn't get really too interesting until I got to about 2003. That was probably my first one, real cool deployment. I did Combined Task Force 53 out of Bahrain, and what that is for people, it's called Operation Southern Watch. After the USS Cole got bombed, they started doing security details and calling either the Army or the Marines to do security on ships. So we got to go it's the craziest thing, man. You're making $90 a day per diem on top of your pay. Most I ever got paid. And it's funny because I was a staff sergeant at the time, and when we did that, and they give you food chits too. So you're making $90 a day per diem, food chits to eat wherever you wanted.
Yeah.
So what we would do is we just hit the gym all the time. We'd go buy a pizza, just put that in our fridge in our room.
Yeah.
And you just eat whatever you want and work out. And then, until we got called up to go on a ship.
Yeah.
And then we'd go on the ship and basically just pull security. We all day, all night, and just protect that ship going in and out. I was on the USNS Sirius, which is a Navy ship. It's an UNREP ship designed to bring supplies from one ship to another that are out at sea. I was also on the MV, which is you've ever seen those huge tanker ships? I was on one of those too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the other ship I got to go on. It was the MV Haug, is who was named after. So those 2 ships I got to go on. Not nothing too crazy out there, and then but it was probably the funnest mission. We ended up in Greece for a week, which was probably I've never been to Greece before. It was a great time. I got to see that. Let's see what other deployment. So that was 2003. 2004 was probably the port where that was a Battle of Fallujah for me. Now I was with 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines. They hadn't seen combat since Vietnam.
Yeah.
And they've been left out of all the different combat stuff. So we went to Kuwait. We came out the 31st MEU. We went to Kuwait to do some training, and the battalion commander worked for the Pentagon, and I guess he had some hookups in there, and somehow slid some paperwork in there, and the next thing you know, it's like, hey, saddle up, we're going to Fallujah. We're like, going to Fallujah? What's in Fallujah? So we jumped in, the whole battalion were in vehicles, we rolled out, and of course that's when I was in a cat platoon, but I was the Javelin section leader at the time. Little backstory on that, I'll tell you about it in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up going to Fallujah during that time. So I felt bad. So we get a lot of you hear about PTSD and stuff, and a lot of it's time from decisions you make and things of that sort. So my boy Stash RB, he was he had just got to the unit before we went on this deployment, and I was the platoon sergeant for first platoon during that time, and I had these guys, and they gave me the troublemakers, but they were probably they were a really good group. So what ended up happening was when he came to the unit, the first sergeant was like, "Hey, you know, you did your you do a year and a half to 2 years as a platoon sergeant, and then you kind of try to rotate to something else, so you don't get, you know, just stuck in one spot."
Yeah.
So he asked me if he goes, "Hey, do you want to do something different?" And I was like, "What's up?" He goes, "Yeah, you know, Stash R&B. I don't want to give everybody's name out because you know then."
Sure.
But
I totally
he said
understand.
Stash R&B just got here. We wouldn't mind if we gave him the platoon so he can get some platoon sergeant time. And then if you want, I know it's a step down because you're going to, you know, from platoon sergeant to section leader, but we need someone to run javelins. And at the time, the javelins were still cool. So there were O351s,
Yeah.
but they had the javelin background and they did demos. So I was like, you know what? It's the one area I haven't been in.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely, if they're going to train me to do all this stuff, I wouldn't mind learning from them.
Yeah, might as well.
So in the Battle of Fallujah, that's why I ended up as a javelin section leader,
Mhm.
and it sucked because we lost we had guys that well the section was we were so short-handed in the section that it ended up being four actually. So we had 6 of us total. Technically it was 7 at the time. I was section leader plus I had 7 people.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, 6 people. It ended up one of my guys, and it's kind of sad really. One of my lance corporals, his mom was having surgery and he had to go home, and then so he got sent home, and it was a pretty, I wouldn't say minor procedure because I want to say it was like a hysterectomy or something like that, but they sent him home and his mom ended up dying while he was back home, and then I ended up having to step in from being a section leader to being a team leader. So I had me and my A gunner, and that's of course, you know, I talked about getting hit by a blast.
Yeah.
The first day I was actually attached to Alpha Company 1-3. Interesting, you know, tidbits of that one. If you don't know about that one, that was the one that. So Alpha Company 1-3 had Sergeant Peralta. I was actually Overwatch when he was killed.
Mhm.
So me and my A gunner were up there, and we can see all the you know everything that went on during that from the outside. We weren't able to be witnesses for the inside because we couldn't see him and what happened. But if you didn't know about Sergeant Peralta, and you're just kind of listening to this, he was the one that went in first into the building, and he basically was hit, and then he actually was, you know, from the witnesses saying that he covered the his body with a grenade, and then of course, you know, he ended up dying, and they ended up, getting a big firefight with these guys, and pulled him out, and he ended up passing away, which really sucked, and he ended up with, I mean, he still ended up with the Navy Cross. He also had a ship named after him too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just kind of sucks, you know, when you know people and they end up getting killed. We ended up losing a lot of people. So if you ever want to look at statistics, 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines took probably the heaviest casualties of all time when it comes to the Iraq conflict.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Afghanistan too. I mean, I'm not sure. I can't be sure of it, but we took over. I want to say it was over a quarter of our battalion. Walked out of there with a Purple Heart. We lost probably like 20 or 30 of those guys out of the battalion, and we went in there not even full strength. We were about like 800-900 people. So
It's crazy.
you know, so it was kind of pretty rough. At the end of it, I was clearing buildings, and it was funny because you know, you have a staff sergeant, and you know, and they all know I'm an 03, so, but it's funny because I just wanted to clear buildings. I wanted to be with these guys, you know, because that's what we did. So me and my A gunner were like, we'd go out with squads, and we'd be their EOD, at their explosive ordnance disposal, because you had to wait hours for them, but with us rocking demo or demolition, we could blow sites on site and, you know, keep moving by having to sit there and wait for EOD to show up. So it's funny because one time I went into the squad, and I'm like, hey man, I just want to clear buildings with you guys, man.
Yeah.
And he goes, you're not trying to take my squad, are you, Stash Sergeant? I'm like, man, it's your squad, dude.
Yeah.
You know, you do what you got to do. I don't care. You want me going first, I'll go in first.
Yeah.
I'll kick in the, you want me to kick indoors, or you want me to throw a grenade in that room, or whatever. You just let me know what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna go in there and be part of your squad for that. And it was cool at first, because I was doing all that and helping those guys out. But I think I see how uncomfortable it was having me there, because he didn't want to order me around.
Yeah.
And which is understandable. And even though I was probably I was one of those guys that I'm not a pig-headed guy who's like, no, you're gonna give me your squad, and I'm gonna take it over kind of thing. I wasn't like that kind of guy, so I let him do it.
Yeah, a lot of guys when you start getting in the higher positions think that their rank outdoes somebody's billet.
Absolutely.
And it's exactly the opposite way around. Your billet is more important than somebody's specific rank.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is if I were to do that, it would completely dishevel because they already built like a camaraderie. They train together. They know each other.
Yeah, they have a
so
structure.
well. Yeah, so you break up their structure. So if I was to do anything like that, their squad, we probably would have all been dead. Because I mean, if we would have made a mistake or something like that, it would have been my mistake for
it'd have been on you,
messing them up. Yes.
Yeah, if somebody would have died, it would have fallen on you.
Oh, absolutely.
And then
absolutely,
you would have been out in 04.
Oh, I might have been out. Period. Because
they would have been
those close calls.
Yeah, they'd have been. Well, they probably if somebody would have died under your watch that you took over.
Oh yeah.
Because you ordered it,
right?
You probably they would have sent you back to the States, and then that would have been the end of your career.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's because I made something that was against what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I never did that, and it's funny because I never got treated for that blast either.
Yeah.
And the reason why is my best friend was a platoon sergeant at the time, because we all worked together.
Yeah.
So we came up, and I see blood coming out of my A gunner's ears, and I was like, "Hey, man, you need to get checked out." And I was like, "Hey, Brian, you need to, we need to go see a corpsman. We need to see somebody."
Mm-hmm.
And remember I told you we're down to 6.
Yeah.
So if you remove that whole javelin team, that's it. They weren't getting any replacements.
Yeah.
And Brian's like, "Hey, man, I can't let you go. We can't afford to have you guys leave." We sucked, dude. It was probably the worst migraine I ever had.
Yeah.
I still have memory problems to this day, but we're like, okay, we'll tough it out. And I wish I would at least seen somebody, because TBI came out a few years after that.
Yeah.
And I mean, they credit for me for TBI, but since I can't prove that I was hit by that blast, I mean, the only other now here's the reason why. So the only other witness to this is the A gunner that I had with me. Now, Brian, in 2005, took his platoon. And if you can look at this up if you like on Wikipedia, but in 2005 he hit a sandstorm, and him and his whole platoon were killed in a CH-53 flying to the Syrian border.
Yeah.
And it tore us up, man. My wife, I remember my wife messaging us, and they couldn't tell they weren't allowed to tell who died in and stuff. So no one knew the battalion. So think about there's over 30 people that died in that bird, and there's no names going out. So and people are in a combat environment, so that was probably rough in itself. And I was such good friends with Brian. His last name is Bland. If you ever want to look it up, Stash Sergeant Bland, you can look up his information. He's in the Marine Corps Museum, all kinds of stuff. But it just sucks. It's tragic, and it sucks. And when you know everybody, that kind of makes it worse.
Yeah.
So that's Battle of Fallujah. I mean, there's a lot more. I could probably go for days on the Battle of Fallujah. I mean, it was probably the craziest time I had in my career.
Yeah.
And I have to say that if any war movie that I could ever watch, I mean, it would be like that. It was a war every single day that I woke up. You know. So that was 2004. Then 2005, I came back.
So what other interesting stuff have you done? Like, I know you've done quite a few deployments, but what have you done? What did you do in between your deployments?
Okay. So in interesting tidbit. So in '99, I went to recruiting duty. So I was a sergeant in recruiting duty, '99 to 2001. All right, and we all know what happened during that. So I was driving to work, recruiting, Marine Corps recruiter, driving to work, and that's when the Twin Towers fell.
Yeah.
And I remember driving. So I drove in to the recruiting station, and I went in and I was like, hey, are we even working today? I mean, good grief, we just had like 3,000 Americans die,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because with recruiting dude, it's like, nah, guess what, man, you're working.
Yeah.
So we ended up working that day, and I'm sitting there, and of course no one's really interested in it. Now, a few days after that, everybody wanted to join. I had like 70-year-old patriots,
Yeah.
former military, former Marines, like, hey, put me back in, Sarge,
Yeah.
you know, let's go get these guys. And it was motivating, you know, just to see people that are just willing to step up and do that. I mean, I think we've been, that has been a while since we've seen that much patriotism come out of people.
I was a sophomore in high school, and when that happened, that's when I decided I was going to join the military.
Out there.
But I was more like I wanted to be, you know, the best. If I'm going to join, you know, I might as well be the best. So I was like, I'm going to be a SEAL. And,
I think everybody starts that way.
yeah, and then so like when I started, you know, my junior year progressed, my senior year, and then I was like ready to go. Like I started digging in and doing research, and then I was like, I don't want to be a SEAL.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I mean, they basically like in SEAL training, you get drowned.
Oh yeah.
They drowned you.
Oh yeah. They dropped
And
it.
I was like, you know what? I'm okay with that. I don't want to do that. So I was like, if I'm going to be the best, I'm just going to join the Marine Corps because I mean, they're
right.
you know, when you look at it, it depends on what you want to do in the military, but like
Yeah.
if that's the, you know, if you're gung ho, you know, you want to break things and kill people, like you join the Marine Corps,
Right.
and that's where it ended up falling on. But
Oh yeah. Oh absolutely.
9/11's what got me.
Yeah, well, you know why I didn't join the Navy SEALs, right? Because I swam like a bag of rocks.
Yeah, and
Right?
you're an iron
Just straight to
duck.
the bottom, dude.
Yeah.
I could not. I was okay at swimming. I wasn't great.
Yeah.
And the drown proofing. So I went to back in my first unit.
Yeah.
Is there a second point? We started getting all the recon drops.
Yeah.
So and then one of the platoon sergeants was a recon. Was a guy came off of recon, and the first sergeant was a guy came off recon. So these guys were like, oh, we're going on a run, and they take you like to a run till everybody drops,
Yeah.
or they'll take you to the pool, and they were drown proofing us in the pool.
Yeah.
So I learned to swim pretty, and then you do brick toes and all kinds of stuff in the pool. I actually became a phenomenal swimmer after that. After those guys did it, and
Yeah.
they taught me how to swim better.
How to swim properly.
Oh, absolutely, proper strokes and
Yeah.
you know how to save your energy in the water and stuff like that. But yeah, it was pretty wild in that one. So recruiting duty. Let's see. So in 2005, I could have probably just jumped into that. But in 2005, I went to to School of Infantry, and I was an instructor there. So I was platoon sergeant there, and then I was the logistics chief for the what do you call the unit leaders training company over there.
Yeah.
So all the unit leader schools that were going on, squad leaders course and all that stuff. I started out as a squad leaders course instructor, and I did it one cycle with them. I'm like, yeah, maybe it's not my bag right here. I'm not into,
Yeah.
you know, doing as much stuff. And they were pretty hardcore guys too. And I was like, yeah, this is cool, but I have some pretty decent computer skills. So I was like, you know, I can probably benefit everybody better.
Yeah.
And I was actually a comm chief. So the comm chief, I was the S4 chief. So I did all the logistics.
Mhm.
Oh man, you name it, audio visual tech. I was, you know, you name it. I was like the jack of all trades in terms of that school. And
Yeah.
I also did I ran their simulation. So, you know, all the courses did these simulators, and I actually ran that for them.
How long were you at SOI?
3 years.
I was at SOI when you were there,
Oh,
because I
really?
went to SOI in 2006 in
Yeah. What company?
March or April. I can't remember. Speaking of TBIs, I can't remember off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
it's actually because you have to like read your stuff.
Yeah,
sometimes.
if I looked at my DD, well, if I looked at my certificate, it would tell me on there, but I can't. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's funny because I can remember 05, I can remember down to detail because everything else, because of that whole the blasting set me off.
Yeah.
Like, I have problems remembering things from back, like high school and stuff. My wife's like, hey, you remember, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so it's brutal and it sucks because some of your best memories, man, you're just like, oh, I did that?
Yeah.
And she'll tell me stuff like that. But yeah,
The,
now 05 to 08, I
Yeah.
was there, you know, doing that.
the best piece of it, like that I heard or whatever for stuff like that, like with TBI and stuff like that, it actually came from Saving Private Ryan.
Yep.
They're having that conversation about like I can't remember my hometown, And he's like, well, you don't start with your hometown, you start your home.
Right.
And then you remember things there, and then you remember your neighbors.
Yep.
And then you remember your block, and then you slowly remember stuff like that. So that's
Right.
how. When I can't remember something, I'm like, all right, what do I remember right around that time?
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and usually references is nice.
Yeah.
But
And then I start thinking about that, and
Yeah.
that's how I get over having like bad memory issues.
Yeah.
Is I try to remember what happened like right around there. Or if somebody tells a story, then I'll sit there and listen, and then I'm like, I don't remember any of that. But then when they start talking, I'll like start trying to be like, remember something like kind of closely related
Right.
to that, and try to work my way.
Or it's usually
to-
someone
to
when
where-
done something. The best thing to ever remember something for us is when someone did something dumb.
Oh,
You remember that one guy who stabbed himself in the leg with a K bar because he was
Oh.
trying to cut his. And you're like,
Jeez.
oh, that's right. And then all the other stuff, it kind of comes back to it when
Yeah.
you're.
yeah.
We had a guy do that. Like he stabbed himself with through his MRE.
Oh,
The K-bar
so
and-
dumb.
Yeah, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, you can't believe this guy's that did something that dumb.
We'll have to do another podcast on dumb things people did
Oh,
while we were
shoot.
in.
I mean, I could go. This
We
could
could
be,
fill it for
this
hours.
could be long. This could
Yeah.
be a long night.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was So, and it sucks because you still can't remember everything. But yes, you're right. If you start it inward and go out,
Yeah.
it does help you remember a lot of things. And then there was let's see, SOI. Oh, my favorite unit, Advisor Training Group.
Mhm.
So I went as an advisor in 2000. Here's another cool tidbit. In 2009, I believe. Yes, 2009. And remember Dakota Myers, right?
Mhm.
Medal of Honor winner. They got shut down for air and artillery and ended up getting pretty messed up, really bad. And I think it's Gonjo Valley, is what they called it. What they needed during 2009, and I remember this, and I was just kind of chill at the time, and they asked me, they're like, hey, what do you think about going on? But we need someone. They had two guys. They had an anti-terrorist officer that needed to go on the mute that they were getting ready to go on. Or the other thing they had was this advisor. Advisor to the Afghans. And we didn't know where you're going to be the army, the police, or the border police, but they needed advisors. So I heard about Dakota Myers' team, having just completely wiped out, and I was like, hey,
Yeah.
send me. And of course,
Sure.
everybody kind of was, I was like all about it. I was
Yeah.
ready to go over there and do it. And we were actually training. What sucked is, so we ended up doing our whole workup, and in February 2010, they were like, hey, just so you all know, we're not allowed to work with the Army anymore. So that right there is all shut down.
Yeah.
So they ended up sending me to Helmand Province, so the armpit of the desert, man. Hottest place ever. In fact, I was in Garmsir. Now, Garmi in Afghan means hot. So, kind of like everybody doesn't realize Camp Horno in Pendleton.
Yeah.
It's actually supposed to be pronounced Orno, and if you speak Spanish, that means oven. So, two hot places, all right.
Yeah.
It was about 150 degrees in Afghanistan. So I'm working in Helmand Province with these guys, but I ended up being with the Afghan border police.
Yeah.
How about let this cool off for a second?
Sure. Another funny point to that. I was doing workups to deploy there too. So we probably would have been deployed together
Oh, dude.
if I wouldn't have gotten my car accident.
Yeah.
Because
I
we were
understood
doing workups to deploy in, I think it was like the end of February or beginning of March of 2010.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Yeah, and it's funny because so I ended up I spent a year almost 8 months,
Yeah.
to be exact, in Afghanistan, with a 3 or 4 month workup to get into being on the team.
Yeah, and I remember we also went to Yuma, Arizona,
Yep.
to do workups for it. It was pretty shitty because I ended up I had 60 days left in the Marine Corps, and they ended up sending me to Yuma for 30 days before I got out.
It's a terrible place to
Yeah.
be too, man. Yuma.
Yeah, it was
That's-
not fun at all.
It's like 29 Palms, so in case you're wondering where Yuma's at, just the middle of the desert, man.
Yuma, Arizona.
Yes.
It did not get under 100 degrees, period, while we were there. Even at nighttime, it didn't get under 100 degrees.
Oh, it's terrible.
And because we all the guys gotta when we gotta sleep outside because it was just too hot to stay in the tent, and so we ended up going and sleeping outside. And I feel bad for the women that were with us because they had to sleep in the tent.
Oh yeah.
They wouldn't let them sleep outside because, Marines will sneak off in the middle of the night.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They'd be trying like. And they had the opportunity. They'd be trying to get their game on.
And it's so disgusting because it's 100 degrees outside, and I mean,
dude, if you think guys smell bad, women smell bad too when it comes to that kind of stuff. You can't stay fresh smelling. And
when you're sweating all day long and you're taking baby white baths, like eventually, like I think like a week and a half into it, they set up showers.
Yep.
But I mean, like we were taking baby white baths where, I mean, I did that in Iraq, so it wasn't that big a deal.
Right.
But like everybody, it was rank. Like, and then people were trying to like, talk to, these guys were trying to talk to girls and girls were trying to talk to guys, and I'm like, you guys are disgusting. Like,
right?
Like you save that for a month from now.
Right.
Like.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a different story when you come out of that environment.
Yeah.
And you're just like you get back to the whether you're back on the ship or you go back you back into a regular base and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's funny, man. Your senses are so keen. Like there'd be a female like a mile away, and you're like.
Yeah, you get a whiff.
Oh,
it's like those cartoons where you smell like the scent trail.
Yeah.
Like
it travels to your nose. And you're like, whoa, that smells amazing. Where is that? And you eventually you're like, oh yeah, but your senses are so keen after that.
Yeah.
Especially after because all your especially a combat deployment, all your senses are heightened.
Yeah.
And then you come off of that, and then you're so desensitized to all the smells that you're normally, dude. Any kind of perfume or anything, it hits you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like, I know it's probably the same for you, but like going from a deployment shopping at the PX to going to Walmart.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it blows your mind. Like the PX, you have like 3 different options for like shampoo, 3 different options for body wash, 3 different options for like deodorant.
Yep.
And then that's it. But then you go to like Walmart and there's like 25, 30. You're like, geez, like
right.
What do I choose?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
it's pretty wild. Yeah, the PX does, and if the PX doesn't, they'll have the good stuff, but the problem is you're paying for the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't just give you, and then if you can find the generic stuff, then you're you're fighting to get that stuff. Yeah. I think at this point, no, we're good.
That camera's on.
Well, that one's still going, but it's
Was this one overheated?
It just gets hot, because you're using 2 cameras, you can feel it.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm just letting it sit for a minute.
Yeah.
That one.
We'll just use.
When I can change battery out of that one, then we can kind of.
We'll just use that footage for now until this one cools off. It's not.
Just give it a minute.
Yeah, it's not that big.
So one of my favorite units that I went to. So after I did that advisor tour, I went to advisor training group, and it was probably the coolest thing ever. Imagine being in a school where you're spending $7 million a go.
Yeah.
And the cycle was about, I want to say it was like a month. These guys were in the field doing. So what we did was we trained them up.
Yeah.
Because we got all kinds of different jobs. We had guys that were, in fact, funny because after I went in the military, I was actually a law enforcement officer with in prison for 3 years. Well, I met 2 of the people that actually were my students at an advisor training group, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. Small world.
Oh, it's tiny. I mean, we almost crossed paths,
Yeah.
And it's funny because I don't ever forget people's faces. I mean,
yeah.
If I could see beards kind of throw me off and stuff now, but
yeah.
But it's funny when I see people, I'm like, because I saw that guy, and I used to work with him in prison. I'm like, dude, you look familiar, man.
Yeah.
And we were just going through his career, like 2 of them, and one guy was in the band. He played like what did he play? Oh, he played something in the band. I can't remember this time, but he was on the team. He was an advisor, and then we had another guy who was a public affairs officer.
Yeah.
And so he was on the team. On one of those teams. And it's funny when I talked to them both. I'm like, dude, you guys were my students. You had to have been my students during that time because it was after 2000.
Cool. All right, we're back. We had a little technical issues, but everything seems to be up and running now.
All right. So I think we were leaving off. I was in advisor training group.
Yes.
That we're talking about.
Yep.
So I said a couple guys that I worked with at the prison. Yeah. I ended up working there, and then it turned out 2 of my students worked. That's how small the Marine Corps is. So when you have 180,000 people, total in your branch of service, you're probably going to run into them at one point or another.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Army has 900,000 people, so it's kind of harder to tell. But You more likely cross paths with you.
It's a bigger group to pull from.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and more of a diverse group in terms of their jobs. So yeah, I did that for 2 years, and I was a gunner sergeant at the time. Gunny. Most people call him gunny, right? And I was an instructor, and I used to teach. I was a platform instructor, teaching advisor techniques. And it was funny because one of the guys that was there actually went there with me. He's retired now too. He actually retired when we were at advisor training group, and came back as a civilian instructor. We had civilian instructors.
Yeah.
Now the reason that I think I talked about it, I kind of mentioned it earlier. It costs $7 million to put on a course, and the reason why is so. Range 220 in 29 Palms. Did you ever see that place? That huge mountain town, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever go by the part where it actually looked like a real market and stuff?
I'm sure. I mean, we did workups there, so I'm sure I went through it.
So that was part of our training area, and then we also had the northern part of it.
Yeah.
And what it was completely as realistic as possible to the environment.
Yeah.
And we actually hired real Afghans.
Yeah.
To play
them.
Each role. So when you're doing advising to a police team, they obviously weren't real Afghan police, but they were real Afghans. They would not talk to you in English at all. They were forbidden to say anything in English, even though we knew they could speak English.
Yeah.
So, and also we'd get them in trouble if they did do that. But we had everything. We had pyrotechnics. So if you ever had an IED go off or an improvised explosive device go off, that people, it would simulate realistic. We had simulated RPG rounds, you name it. And we could make Armageddon out of it if we had to. And the way it worked was we weren't trying to do that, but the point was if you were doing really good, you'd probably see less action. You'd see a couple things here and there, maybe an ambush or something. But if you were just like completely like effed up beyond relief or foobarred, then you would get like Armageddon, and we'd be out there like instructors. We had the orange Camelbacks. If you have the 3D camera, you can we can look at that if you want to. That was where I got that at. We were known as the orange Camelback guys because we were instructors. There's another group out there too that wore those, but that's what we were known for. As being part of control. So we'd be in the middle watching these firefights, and they had these cool backpacks with they're gas powered AKs.
Yeah.
And they had these, and they actually use like gas, and it would actually like you'd be firing and it just like fire like a full auto AK.
Nice.
And it sounded like it and played realistic. And then we used the 240s, which is a machine gun. But what we would do is single load it.
Yeah.
And take the blank firing adapter off. We take the BFA off, and those would be sniper rifles because they were loud. They're super loud. And when you shoot like a sniper rifle, you don't know where it's coming from, but it's loud.
Yeah, you can hear it.
You can hear it. So it was probably one of the most, and it was so realistic in scenarios and stuff like that. It was probably the most fun place to work, where you can have a good time, and we were the scenario makers for it.
Yeah.
So we had the opportunity to kind of, depending on the team, as long as they hit all the wickets in terms of qualification. Yeah. And then during that time too, we also had we started getting a lot of casualties. Real bad. The blue on green, if you guys remember that, if you were during around that time, 2011 on, we were getting hit hard by our own guys turning on us and stuff like that. In fact, the team that relieved me right after had a blue on green. And a couple guys got killed in the gym. It sucked. It's horrible. So I ended up having to start doing like defensive firearms training, just to, like stuff you see in movies. Like no kidding. Like they would pushing the chair or flip the table, and you'd be doing that kind of firearm shooting.
Yeah.
To be able to finish stuff because you'd be in the middle of a meeting and who knows what's going to happen at that time. So that was one of the things that we started doing. It was fun. It was probably, I think I had more fun during that time. It sucked because you're out in the middle of the desert, you're sweating, you're hating life.
Yeah.
You had to do, we had to take what we did we couldn't go without someone either getting. It didn't happen all the time, but we had enough people shoot themselves because they didn't want to listen to us.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing was turret masking. For some reason, people couldn't get out of their head. Like, look, this is the sight. This is your barrel. And they're looking, they can see through it, but the shield was right there, and they would shoot and it ricochet, and every once in a while we had one guy, it ricocheted, went down in there, got him and stuck. It was like I could see the round stuck in his leg. It was like right here in his leg, so pretty wild.
Yeah.
pretty wild and crazy, but you know, it is what it is. But he was fine. Yeah, I mean, it sucks because we had to life flight him out of there.
Yeah.
They flew him down to the hospital and removed it, and he was back like in a couple hours after that. But yeah, but that was our biggest thing, was that, you know, they would, you know, it could have been catastrophic. We used to tell them, like, put your barrel on top of the, and we'd be like on the side of it, go like this, like trying to tell them, and they, no, don't do it, boom, and you're like, oh god, it'd be okay, and that's what one time when the back door flew open on the MRAP, and you know, guy goes flying out of there, like, you know, he's been shot, and you see the blood in the vehicle, and we're like, oh god. The other one was we actually had one almost burn up either a Humvee or an MRAP, because it dropped the pen flare inside and it went off inside the. No, was it? I don't know if it was a pen flare or it was something to that effect. It was some type of pyro that we had that you're supposed to be warning them of it, and it was just like literally boop, right down in the turret and went off in there. And of course, everybody just bailed out the vehicle. Got fire extinguishers and put it out. But yeah, it was crazy stuff, man. You stuff you wouldn't believe. Yeah, that's so that was then. I ended up in Okinawa for 3 years. Got to take the family, which was cool. That counted as 3 deployments. They didn't want to give me the overseas ribbon, so they kept giving me sea service deployment for a year. It's crazy. They don't like to give grunt stuff. That's the only thing that sucks about being an infantryman, because, you know, they're like, oh, you got too many awards. We don't want to give you anything extra in that. So it sucks to be you. You know, don't we're not gonna give you what you rate. Let's give you something else, because you're with those guys.
Something close to it.
Right. Well, so that's why I ended up with 9 deployments. Technically, you know, it should have been that. It should have been a sea, overseas and a 2 stars on it. But whatever, I guess, or at least 1. Who knows?
So was your the advisor training was your favorite time in the Marine Corps?
I think so. It was one of the tough times. I think I don't know. It's tough, man, because
well, after 23 years, I mean, it's hard to pick out like this was my favorite time.
Yeah, it was. I have to say, it was between that and it's kind of a cross between that and that combined task force. Because I mean, dude, I couldn't beat that. I was making great money. I got a Persian rug hanging in my wall. I don't know if you've seen it when you go to.
I've seen it. It's pretty cool.
I'm describing it to you. That thing was $1,200. It's pure silk.
Well, and this was it was $1,200. What, in like 2000?
Oh, this is 2003.
2003. So it'd be even, you know, double that at least now.
If it went up in price. Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure it went up in price.
Everything goes up in price. Pure Persian silk. I bought it in Bahrain, and I was like, dude, this is really cool. You know, didn't realize at the time, you know, what prayer robes are for and stuff.
It just looked cool.
I thought it was cool, so I was like, oh, no, it hangs up in my house. I got a $1,200 rug. But between those 2, advisor training group and that CTF, man, were just 2 great deployments. You know, but then when you get to look at it, you know, I enjoyed my whole career one way or the other. I think near the end is when I started to get real tired. My last unit was great. It was so after Okinawa, I ran through. So I was ground sensors. So I did ground sensors in Okinawa, and then I helped with I actually was the company gunny for for headquarters over for 3rd Intel. So I did that. That was okay. I ran into some rough times there. I tell you what, man, I got my dive certification out there. Helps with PTSD, I'm gonna tell you. Especially, it's good coping skill if you ever have the opportunity to scuba dive. It does everything that, because most people think you're supposed to get an adrenaline rush. So most people buy motorcycles, and then of course you end up either dead or injured or just and I did it too. I have a motorcycle license. Usually not the best way to do it, because you just keep adding on to stuff, and then your body still wants that. It wants to remember the adrenaline rush. Hence why Harley Davidson started. That's how, of course, they got started, was making motorcycles, because they wanted to relive that whole thing. So I learned the hard way. That's probably not the way to do it. If you just enjoy riding, ride, okay, just for the fun of it. Don't do it for the because you're trying to relive your adrenaline rush from combat. All right. Scuba diving is great because the opposite. They call it a lazy man sport. So I got over 100. It's funny because I went from nothing, and I believe it was a year, less than a year, that I got my dive master. So a PADI dive master, just underneath the instructor. So I mean, I go to school, become an instructor, I guess. Not really fun though to dive out here in Idaho, guys. So not something I really am looking forward to if I have to. But either way, it's fun. So I did that, and then I came back. Last unit I ended up with was another schoolhouse. I ended up with So I ended up at Marine Corps Tactics and Operations Group, and they're war fighters. They're the ones that teach everybody from the regimental commander all the way down to battalions, to even smaller elements to like tank. We used to have tank battalions, teaching them to integrate with everybody else, so that when we go to war, and we even had other services. Because if you've never been to war, it does not go smooth when you're working with Army. The Army's doing their own thing, and good example of that Desert Storm was probably one of the best examples.
Yeah.
We ran away from the Army. We were like, we're doing our own thing, and
you do you.
and they couldn't keep up with us. Yeah, and we're trying to do our own thing, and of course they probably didn't like that too much, and everybody's communication's terrible, and we still communicate terribly between services when we're at war. So we had to come up with a school, and I think they also came up with their version, in order to make war fighting work.
Yeah.
For services all around, and working with each other, and kind of pulling out what can you guys do, from all the services. It's cool because we used to get TACs from tactical air controllers from the Air Force. They would come in, and and they did it all. It's very very similar to advisor training group, but it was more more fighting functions than anything else, like making sure that and then of course a lot of war scenarios from actual stuff that we did in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is really cool school to be at. Everybody, I was a master sergeant at the time. Everybody else was a master sergeant. So so I was the instructor development chief. I was the one that developed all their curriculum, and actually, it was cool. One of the most interesting parts about that whole thing, I was one of the few people in the Marine Corps that was not what do you call it, the basic instructor course. I was one of the few people in the Marine Corps that could actually make instructors.
Oh, nice.
And I kind of reservists come in from that to do all the thing, and we had to make them instructors. And no, guess what? Boom! I'm giving you. You are now basic instructor qualified. Yeah. So I was able to sign off on their stuff. Oh. And then the second half, I did computer stuff. I'm back to doing computer stuff again, and doing. I was a IKM, what they call IKM, or Information Knowledge Management. Basically, how people are really disorganized. I was the one that kind of figured out the naming conventions for all the files, so people could find stuff. Because people can't name things very well, and also, SharePoint, ShareDrive, all that stuff was organized. I organized all that, and that was one of the things I did before I left there. Besides, and also the website. So if you ever look at McTOG on the Marine Corps website, that was one of the things I also used to run too. And I had a couple civilians work for me, good guys, but that was about at the end in terms of my 23-year deployment. Or excuse me, my 23-year tour.
Yeah, what deployment?
Oh deployment. Yeah, never leave, right?
Yeah, deployment from civilian life.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. And now here I am, first Civ Div.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like with you guys and.
Yeah, rocking it. Yeah.
Old as dirt, and now playing just playing with everything else that we got going on.
So we talked about your career overall. We talked about some good times. What was some bad times? Because it's not all unicorns and rainbows.
No, there's a lot of rough times I had.
The Marine Corps, they give you the green weenie.
Oh yeah. Well, it wasn't. So the higher up you get in rank, the more you. It's like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
It's the more you see behind the curtain. And during that time, it was very political. I'm not taking political sides, and there's nothing. I'm not going to go that route.
Well, it's like military politics and politics out here is completely different.
Oh, absolutely.
So when we're talking about politics, we're not talking about Republicans or Democrats or anything like that. It has to do with military.
It's more like a leadership politics.
Yeah, it's military politics.
I don't want to name names on units. I'm gonna keep that out of this. Because I don't need anybody to like, hey man, what's going on?
Well, I did the same thing. I don't feel like when you have an issue like that, that's why I never named names.
Oh yeah.
Or units, because I don't feel like they deserve the recognition. Regardless of good or bad.
Oh yeah.
So.
But I was a high-ranking guy at the time, and it just very toxic environment. It was horrible to work around. I hated going to work every day. But in the end, I made it through, and it's just one of those things. That was probably the worst thing. But the next two, actually losing guys. I was talking about. I'm not going to go into detail of that again.
Yeah, we talked about that.
But when you, I didn't even go through a lot of stuff, and you're going to need a lot more alcohol than this if you're going to want.
Well, we talked offline. Yeah, we talked offline about it. Yeah.
But you see a lot of stuff, and most of the time you don't want to. I mean, I can talk to Danny all day long about it because being a fellow brother, he'll understand
Yeah.
where I'm coming from, and it's the situation and everything based around that. But you see, war is just ugly, regardless. Even when I was 2010 when I was a advisor, we didn't fire a single shot. I didn't get combat action for that one. Now, don't get me wrong, the pucker effect was still there. Every time, I was always lead vehicle. I was always the jack of trades kind of guy, of all trades.
Yeah.
And I was just good at everything.
Yeah.
I was the only one running around on the advisor team and I still have the drums, by the way. So I had those C-Mags. I used to carry around two C-Mags, two 100 round drums, because we didn't have machine guns on our advisor team. So I was like, okay, well, I may not be able to spray well, but I got 100 rounds on it that I'll be able to suppress until you guys can do your thing.
Exactly.
So and then we only had so many corpsmen. So we were lucky for us. We're all combat lifesaver trained and things of that sort. So for the headquarters team, not only was I company gunny, which is the supply guy, and ordering stuff and make sure they get everything, and taking it out to them, I was also the team corpsman, the machine gunner. And I carried all this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty wild. But but even then, we still had. We still had a lot of casualties, which really sucked. The battalion that we were attached to 3-1, and or 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, out of Horno. They just had a rough time, man, and 5th Marines right next door was having the same issue. It was rough during that time, and a lot of that green on blue that I was talking about earlier. So it just kind of sucked. You always had to help react to the stuff, and
it happens all around, and it kind of goes both ways. There's people you'll never forget when you join the military, especially when you do deployment, either because things went good or things went bad.
Right.
There's always those people you'll never forget, and I definitely think that's like the best and worst part of the military.
Oh yeah.
Because there's those people that you make lifelong friends. I had one of my buddies who I met in the Marine Corps. We became family. I mean, he was one of my groomsmen in my wedding. Shout out to Alex. But then you've got other guys who
shout out.
Yeah, you got other guys who because he's probably gonna listen to it as soon as we post this. He's gonna be like,
yeah.
"Oh, where is it? Let me listen to it."
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people know me too, so I'm gonna be surprised if they don't listen to this.
And but then at the same time, you get people who you're on deployment. Deployment bonds are different than anything else because
absolutely
you're basically like, you hear the term, I got your six or whatever, but like legit, these people have your back. Like like you're protecting their life and they're protecting yours.
Yep.
And there's no bond.
There's no greater bond. There's no greater bond.
And that's the part where it sucks because when you lose one of those lifetime friends, because of combat or
just health
the 22
issues, anything,
or
exactly.
or accidents or like the adrenaline rush that they can never chase.
Right. Some of these guys need it, and then or some of these guys, like, again, you just mentioned 22 a day. That's a real thing. I mean, I'm not sure if the numbers are going up and down and stuff like that, but I mean per day. But yeah, 22 veterans kill themselves a day.
Yeah, it's
which is rough, and it sucks. Being a veteran, and I can understand where they're coming from. Some of these guys coming from when their mindset goes, and it's sad. I mean, hopefully, if there's a way to help these guys out, I would totally be about it, man. You never want to see that camaraderie we built. You never want to see. I mean, like I didn't know Danny before until he actually started, coming out, and he moved out here, and we met up. But I tell you what, though, the camaraderie is no different because he's still a brother one way or another. So
yeah, definitely.
Which is it's pretty crazy how much of a bond. It's not like a football team, because a football team you only work with the guys you work with.
Yeah.
But when you're a Marine and you're in, you can always relate to another Marine, which is pretty wild.
Well, and that's why like with a lot of other branches, like, oh, I'm former Army, I'm this, I'm that. Like the Marines, like you're a Marine still. Right. Like I got out in 2010, still a Marine. It's 2020, and it's one of those things that you earn the title for life.
Oh yeah.
And so when you run into another Marine, instant camaraderie, even though they could have been, super uptight, they could have been a shitbag, they could have been, the party person, they could have been whatever, like whatever role you fit in when you were in the Marine Corps, you could have been the workhorse. It doesn't matter, but as soon as you have is like, oh, you're a Marine. Oh yeah, me too. You know, like you have that instant camaraderie and that instant bond between each other, and
Right.
you can relate on a different level. If you were like, oh yeah, I went to I don't know, I went to this college, or I played this or I played on a football team, or I did this or
Right.
that. You know, it's a different type of it's a different type of brotherhood.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was SOY. SOY we talk back. I was with Charlie Company, by the way.
Okay.
So ITB.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was who I spent a year and a half with for the, you know.
I'll look it up and I'll get back to you when.
Oh yeah,
when I
well,
find
you
my
figure it
stuff.
out.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
you
I can't-
remember.
yeah.
Not a big deal. I just brought it out. So
Yeah.
if it does have, it'd be funny if you were one of my students. I'd
Yeah.
laugh. It's funny because I meet every once in a while. I meet my students.
Yeah, I'll have to show you a picture. I'll have to show you my SOI picture.
Every card's full.
Okay,
So
that's fine. We'll use this one. I'll have to show you my my picture so that way I could be like, this
Yeah.
is me, because I look different than I did, you know, when I was.
Absolutely.
when I was in.
I'm trying to figure out. I have my boot camp picture in here somewhere. I'll have to show it to you later,
Oh,
though.
yeah,
We
yeah.
could do that. We could post it a picture on if you really want to see what I used to look. Dude, I was a nerd, man. I had a flat top for like 10 years. I mean, and we're talking like kid and play flat top, man. It wasn't
Oh,
like
wow.
just the.
Wow.
It was pretty. Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty woo. So yeah, I wasn't rocking that horseshoe too much. I did a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
every once in a while, but yeah. It had
Well,
the,
that's part of getting promoted that high, right? You have to have one.
I don't know if it's supposed to be high. I think it's supposed to be short.
Yeah.
The shorter it is.
No. I mean, when you get higher in rank, you have to have, you know, some sort of horseshoe, at least for a
At
little
least
while.
I think so. I actually had a high reg most of the time.
Yeah.
But I was always in reg. So I mean, I couldn't chew anybody out and be like,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
You know, like if I had hair like that, no, hey man, what are you doing? It just would not go well.
I always rode the line with regs on it. I always had longer hair.
Oh, yeah.
So it was always like, oh, you need to get a haircut, and I'm like, excuse, you know, according to the UCMJ, the regulations state that your hair can be X amount
Did you
long.
ever have it
and,
where someone pulled that reg on you?
I did, yeah, and I always had it. Well, because
Oh, man.
the best thing about, you know, living right off a military base is
Yep.
there's barbers everywhere,
Yep.
and you get that barber that you click with,
Yes.
and that's your barber. So when you have a specific barber, you can have, and they know the regs
Oh yeah.
because that's their livelihood. So you can go in there and they'll measure it for, you know, they'll pull it up and then they'll
Yeah.
cut
They'll
it and then
measure
they'll
it out.
measure it, you know.
Yeah.
So that way if, you know, and I've had it happen to where, you know, it's these you know,
I've seen
gunnies,
first-
these master guns,
Usually first sergeants.
first sergeants, where you're over by the PX, you know, like you're outside smoking and, you know, like in the back of your cover a little bit of hair's hanging out, you know,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're like, hey devil, and then
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
and then you just turn around slowly, and then you just look for the rank, and then, you know, like, they're like, oh, you need to get a haircut, and then it starts that whole.
It's funny because when I was master, I got one guy one time. He was, and I think he was a recon marine. And,
Yeah.
and you know, 'cause if you ever noticed that the SF guys, they'll push everything.
Yeah.
But one time a guy was getting a haircut, and he's sitting in the barber chair, and I'm sitting there waiting to go.
Yeah.
And I'm just hanging out, and he got done, and I was like, "Hey man, are you serious?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Hey, I'm not gonna tell you how to get a haircut.
Yeah.
All right, you probably get your butt chewed and hear it enough that you're out of regs and stuff. I'm gonna tell you, man. I get it, and I'm not gonna chew you out, but I'm gonna let you know that you're probably out of regs. So, you know, I just don't want you to get in trouble.
Yeah, you do you. Yeah.
Yeah. You do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
You don't belong to me, so I'm not gonna sit there and
Yeah.
because people do that. They police up after everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm like this. Let me ask. I said this to him. I'm like, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Does your unit let you have hair like that? Yeah. Then I'm not gonna go any further with this.
Yeah.
Because if I'm chewing you out, you know, and you're gonna go back to your unit and they're not gonna say nothing, then what's the point of me chewing you out?
Exactly. Yeah. You're
So-
you're wasting both your guys' time.
I had common sense. And it's funny because a lot of people don't like that, especially with a higher ranking guy. Like, you know, because I was like, I didn't chew him out. I was just like, all right, well, if they let you do it, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't call him a dude.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I believe it was a corporal time. I'm like, hey, corporal, if your command lets you do that, your chain of command's cool with it.
Yeah.
Rock out, man. I'm just gonna, you know, just let you know that technically you're not supposed to have that, but you know, if they're not gonna fix you, then why me fix you?
Yeah. Exactly.
Not my place. Get out of my chair. I want to get my haircut.
Yeah.
You know. So no, it was cool, and you know, in retrospect. But if you were one of my guys and you were out of regs, oh, I'd get you.
Yeah.
Like, hey, man.
Yeah,
Fix
I always knew the UCMJ just so that way if they were like, oh well, you know, you can't do this, blah blah blah, and I'm like, well, according to the UCMJ, I can.
Right,
with
right.
all due respect, you know.
Right.
That's basically saying like, yes, I can. Go fuck yourself.
Right. And it's all dependent too on who you had. Some of the best first sergeants, man, were I had an artillery first sergeant. That came in, or he was artillery.
Yeah.
And he was a first sergeant, and he came in, man, one of the best first sergeants ever, man.
Yeah.
It wasn't always the best to get an 03.
Yeah.
Especially when because a lot of these times people were good in certain areas. You got a first sergeant from the legal side, for example.
Yeah.
That dude knew legal better than you ever will.
Of course.
So
yeah.
you didn't push that envelope. But yeah, no, I mean, I get it. It was good to know the regulations. Like I knew all the regulations, and I could quote it and do anything else. But it was just to that point. Like you have to sometimes take it from an outside perspective and where they're coming from. Because I used to like, hey man, where are you from? And people used to do the DE. They stopped letting us call Marines devil dogs because they only used it in derogatory. Hey, devil dog.
Yeah.
And I used to be motivated like, hey, devil dog, what's up? But everybody wanted to use it negative as you knew you were getting your butt chewed if someone called you devil dog, which was horrible.
Yeah.
It's the coolest nickname ever. That was given to us by the Germans, and here we are. We use it as a derogatory.
Yeah. We used to use it to each other to kind of make fun of those type of people.
Yeah.
And we would just walk around just like we'd be at the barracks or wherever and just yell out, "Hey, yo, devil dog!" While somebody's walking, and then you could just see them like stop, and then their shoulders just sink down, and they turn around, and we're like, "Gotcha!"
Right. Oh, you jerk.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? It was criminal to walk on the grass.
It's still. I have a hard time. I have a hard time doing it now.
Right? You want to avoid the grass because you knew.
Yeah.
There's a sergeant major out there just watching out
waiting.
the window for you to step on the grass.
All they're doing is you're sitting in our office with binoculars, just like who's walking on the grass.
Right.
Who's walking on the grass?
God forbid that you, that there's a sign there that says "keep off the grass," and you take a shortcut through the grass.
Yeah.
Cutting that corner or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, it's your life was pretty much over.
Yeah.
I did have a couple cool first sergeants, sergeant majors out there. There's one sergeant major, he used to he would put a couple pieces of trash out.
Yeah.
And he would give you, if you pick the trash up, like you're not supposed to be told or something, but if you pick the trash up, and sometimes he'd leave like little stuff in there, and he'd give you the day off.
Oh wow.
Like, hey, this is good for one day off. I have a 72 this weekend. We were all sergeant major.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh damn, I got a day off, and people were like, and it was kind of cool incentive because people were like out there like picking up every piece of trash and
looking at
and throwing it away because
he
was hoping the sergeant they're trying to get a day off, which it was pretty cool. I mean, he didn't do it too often, but he did it enough to where people would do it, man. People pick up trash, which is great incentive because if you don't have that, people
you gotta take care of where you live. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they don't go above and beyond, and your barracks is your barracks,
Yeah. Well, I think those type of higher ups are very few and far between. So like coming from junior enlisted, like you just kind of like do your job and then try to stay away from the barracks, the company office, or work, because you get those hard chargers who are just like they're ready. They pick up that rank, and then now it's time to like I don't work as hard as I used to, so now I just got to look for things to do, and usually the things to look for do is to chew ass. Like that's usually like.
That's when you have too much downtime, there's too much eyes on. And that's what happens. Yeah,
so a lot of those junior Marines just kind of like I never had anybody cool. Like I had a mass sergeant who was cool, only because he basically was one of the junior enlisted. Like he came and played ball with us. He would talk shit to us like while we were playing ball and stuff, and he would be like, "Hey, don't take it easy because I'm a mass sergeant."
I remember a couple mass sergeants. But you know what though? I think when you become mass sergeant, I was good at mentoring.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like where I saw myself going. Yeah. Like those guys from Ground Sensor Platoon, man. I love those guys. Those guys, but I treated them just like they were my platoon.
Yeah.
And even though I was a high-ranking mass sergeant,
yeah,
I felt more. It was cool because I felt more comfortable. Because you kind of learn your lessons, and when I was a corporal, and dude, I had a rough time as a corporal. Because I got meritoriously promoted to corporal.
Yeah.
And I hadn't been a lance corporal for that long. And it was probably the hugest learning curve.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
Giant learning curve, yeah.
It was brutal. And then you couldn't, at the time I had reconstruction before, I was in the headquarters filling in for a year. I think I was out for a year.
Yeah.
Filling in, and then I went on a meritorious board, got promoted, then I had to go back to the infantry.
Yeah. And
I've been out of the infantry for a year. There's a lot of knowledge. Believe it or not, the infantry, you may think people are dumb. For those of you guys out there, I tell you what, if you can shoot at things, get on a radio, call for air, call for artillery, do multiple things at the same time while directing your troops, that's what an infantryman does. And it's like, no kidding, that's not easy to do at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to remember all these things that are coming out there, plus give reports in real time.
Yeah.
So, I'll take a break for something.
Sure.
Yeah, take a break just for a second.
All right, back again. Phone call happened, had to take it. So, all right. So we were talking about
Just mass sergeant mentoring and stuff like that.
Yeah, mass sergeant's mentoring and just trying to, kind of, like I was saying, my mass sergeant was really cool. He kind of treated a lot of the junior enlisted as people instead of like as
Right.
their rank,
Right, but I think gunnies were like that too. I think the best rank I ever had
Yeah.
was gunner sergeant.
Well,
and it's only because you're what you're in charge of. I mean, yeah, they're kind of jerks to everybody.
Yeah.
But if you ever notice, man, the most respected person ever was a gunny.
Yeah.
You get more respect from that. But yeah, I agree with you with the mass sergeant because they're a little more laid back.
Well, I kind of think it depends on the person too, because I've had my mass sergeant was cool, my gunny kind of a prick, and we
Right.
had a couple of them,
Right.
and then same thing with I've never had a good first sergeant. I've never.
First sergeants are just first sergeants, man.
I-
Their own beasts, and
Yeah.
they're all like, Well, it's kind of sucks. I never put myself in their shoes because I didn't. When you're really thinking about it, they have to deal with the CO,
Yeah.
and if they're the company and the battalion commander,
Yeah.
and you had to deal with both of them. Then you always had the rogue XO,
Yeah.
and then the company gunny would kind of keep him in check a little bit.
Well,
But it's also all dependent,
it's one of those things that like, hey, that's your billet. Like you decided to go you decided to stay in the Marine Corps this long. If you're having a shitty time, don't take it out on the junior Marines.
Right.
Like,
Oh, that's
look,
true.
we're learning. Like
Yeah.
even if you've been in the Marine Corps 2 years, 3 years, like there's still a lot left to learn.
Right.
Like,
Well, what's funny is the Army is the one thing they got right was if you were a
The one
first
thing?
sergeant in the infantry, you
Yeah.
were in the infantry.
yeah,
And that's the one thing they got right. Now, Marine Corps first sergeants, the reason why it's so hit and miss
Yeah.
and very hard to find, the balance in between there is they could be any job.
Yeah.
And now you have females that can run around as first sergeants in the infantry. Before that was like that was like unheard of.
yeah, no go.
Nothing wrong with the female, of course. But what I'm trying to say is that that's something that was just unheard of, and we used to just, you would get like every type of job out there as your first sergeant, and sometimes, that guy could be good at legal, but that doesn't necessarily mean he can lead.
Yeah, it doesn't transfer over between MOSs.
Right.
Just because you're good at admin or you're good infantry or you're good, food service or bulk fuel or
Right.
intel battalion, just because you're good at that doesn't mean you're a good leader.
Well, on the opposite end too, just so you know it, to be a first sergeant and a sergeant major, 9 times out of 10 of those people that are picked, they're former drill instructors.
Yeah, definitely.
So the mass sergeants were just former, like for me, I was an infantry, like you already know my background. I was School of Infantry and all these other places, but I was never a drill instructor. That's one thing I was like, yeah, no thanks, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go recruiting duty. So, and that's where I ended up going.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where, and I think sometimes with that drill instructor, some of my best friends are drill instructors, but some of them, when they go back, they don't let go of that. And that rubs off real wrong to your guys too.
We had a staff sergeant who, he was a drill instructor, and he came back and he would put on that kind of drill hat when we were at work, but you could always see that smile behind his face.
Right.
And I was the type of person to where he would say something and most people would be like, I want to get out of here, and I would just ask more questions.
Right.
And then he would just kind of like look at me, and I would just kind of like smile, and we became friends because of that, because he
Nice.
was trying to be a hard ass
Right.
to a point.
Right.
But a lot of times he had a weird sense of humor.
Right.
And once you kind of like called him on some bullshit,
Right.
because he would just make up stories about boot camp, and I was always like, that doesn't sound right.
Right.
And you call him on it, and then he would just laugh about it, and then we became friends because of that.
Right.
But at the same time, like I had a drill instructor in boot camp where, like my senior drill instructor was a hard charger.
Oh, yeah.
He had like 45-pound weights in his bag, and he was just doing whatever he could. And then I had another drill instructor who was like now that I look back on it, was like out of weight, like regs.
Yeah, the regs.
And
yeah.
then like when we went hiking, he was like eating candy, and like just throwing the wrappers like as we were
man,
hiking.
that's sacrilege right
And
there.
yeah, well, while we were doing the Crucible, he was doing this stuff. When we did the Crucible,
Man.
or when we humped after the Crucible,
Right.
where you go up and you know you have the ceremony on top of
Right.
I can't remember what it's called, but and then the oceans in the background. And,
Reaper.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Reaper.
Yeah.
And then so you have the oceans in the background and everything. My senior found out he was eating candy and all this kind of stuff, and came up to him, and he had just took his pack off, my drill instructor, and it dropped on the ground, and it kind of like bounced a little.
Oh my God, he did not.
And
Please tell me he did
my
do it.
senior was standing
That's
right there, and he looked at
terrible.
him, and he went and grabbed his bag to like he grabbed it like hard to pick it up like it was like heavy, you know, and he just flew it in the air like this, and it was like he flew it in the air and then
Oh,
landed on the
man.
ground.
There's
and
no credibility when you do
he
that.
opened
You
it up,
lose it.
and I was the guide, so I was like standing right by them, and he opened it up and looked, and he's like, "What the fuck is it?" He had a pillow in his backpack,
Oh,
so he'd been
man.
doing the Crucible and the hump and everything with a pillow, and it just looked a couple pillows, so it looked
Right.
like he had everything, but it was, you know.
Yeah.
So you have, like, it all depends on the Marine, you know. Like there's good Marines that get to, you know, they never really progress to a few ranks because they don't fit in for whatever reason,
Right.
or you have good Marines who make it to
Yep.
retire, or you've got shitbags that
Right.
they get kicked out, or
Right.
they don't make it, or they make it, you know, certain amount of time and they retire, you know.
Right. It's not about how smart you are. It's about how much common sense you have.
Yeah.
It's one time we had a captain on hike with us. I was weapons company, and we were hiking, and the guy had just a pistol, and we're hiking the 50 calibers, which are
Yeah.
just the receiver alone. So one guy would have a receiver, it's about 54 pounds.
Yeah.
You're talking like I forgot how much a barrel weighs, but they're heavy. Everything's heavy on that thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can, and then, you know, so we're carrying those. We're carrying mortars. We're carrying all the heaviest stuff you can possibly get, and he's hauling.
Yeah.
And I remember we were on this hike, and we're like, and it was you know, it's one of those. It was only gonna be like a 3-mile hike, but he was moving. We're probably, you know, faster than you're supposed to move.
Yeah.
Well, one of the stops, I was like, I said, you know, we all face inboard. We kind of hang out, you know, put our packs down and kind of rest for a minute.
Yeah.
And the guy that was right in the front, I was like, come here, man. And we bring him up, and I brought my squad leaders in, and I was like, hey guys, how's that pace? And he's like, oh, he's killing us. And I remember, I think I was a staff sergeant at the time. He's a staff sergeant gunny, I can't remember. But I was like, hey man, this is what we're gonna do. As soon as he gets ready to step off, you're gonna put that 50 cal receiver right on his pack
Yeah.
and make him grab it.
Yeah.
And it was funny. He's getting ready to step. Like he's like, oh, like ready to go, and I'm like, and you see him like he's like, bloop, right on his pack, like on the CO's pack,
Yeah.
and he's like, here you go, sir. And then he like grabbed it,
Yeah.
and he started hiking. And he was like, oh,
Shit.
as he started walking, like he just
Yeah.
like realized it was like,
Yeah.
and it was funny because he actually pulled the whole company in at the end, which kind of, I think sometimes you kind of need that because some of these guys don't know. But I use the common sense thing on him, like, okay, man, he's not getting it.
Yeah.
That we're back here dying,
Trying to keep up. Yeah.
trying to keep up with this guy.
Yeah.
And when we threw that 50 cal receiver on his shoulders, and he had to carry that,
Yeah.
and he realized it. And when we stopped for that, it was pretty much the hike was going to be done after that. But he pulled over. He goes, "Hey, look, I'm real sorry about that. Sometimes we don't really realize it where you guys are coming from.
Yeah.
But then I got that wake up of reality, and you know, after you guys gave me that 50 caliber, all right, now from now on, we're gonna
Tone
set
it
this
down a
right.
little bit.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
won't be as motivated on these hikes. You know, so it was good. We're like, hey, we appreciate that, sir, because you know this, because you know I'm sitting there carrying stuff, and I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
god, this is killing me.
Yeah.
But yeah, and sometimes it just takes some, you know, you gotta make them realize it from your perspective. That's what I mean by it. Don't matter how smart you are. It's about
Yeah.
using a common sense
Yeah.
approach to without embarrassing somebody or you know making them lose face.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes that's what it takes. I mean, we had we had our XO. I used to help out with the McMap,
right.
because I mean, I was undefeated my senior year in high school in wrestling till I broke my collarbone, and I did MMA. You
Yeah.
know, I've done lots of stuff. You know, as far as it comes to grappling and fighting and stuff.
Right.
And and so I used to help out, and also because I'm 6'4", getting at 220
Right.
always been a struggle for me. So like I'd have a good PFT, but I'd be like 225 or whatever. So
Right.
I'm a fat body, which means I'm overweight, even though I get 260 PFT. Like I'm still
Right.
overweight by a few pounds when I'm 6'4", 225.
Oh, there's no way, dude. Height
You know.
weight standards just got.
The only
It's
time
crazy.
minus boot camp where I made weight was when I came back from Iraq, and that's because I had no junk food, I had no soda, I had no nothing, and all we did was work out
Right. And drink water all the time.
and drink water, and that's unrealistic standards for being
yeah.
back in stateside.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so for some people it's ridiculous. And when I was that skinny, you could see in between my ribs.
Oh yeah.
Like if I made weight, you could see my ribs, and like
Oh, yeah.
I didn't feel like I ever looked healthy.
Right. Right.
So in order to punish me, they used to make me go with the McMap guys.
Oh wow.
So I was like, this is great. Like
Right.
this is the stuff I love.
Right.
And so we had our XO, come out there, and because the first sergeant always used to give me shit like, well, how come you can't make weight? Like you do this, blah blah blah. And I was like, I don't like first sergeant, it's just not in my blood.
Dude,
Like,
this guy's nowadays,
Yeah.
they're tape. They don't make weight ever.
Yeah.
So I think they started adjusting that because the percentages because of that.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I was like, I don't know, first sergeant. He's like, look, you might as well be a certified instructor. You've gone with, the gray belts, the green belts, brown belts,
Right.
and I was like, hey, first sergeant, like this is what I do. Like I love this stuff.
right.
If you could send me to go get into instructor school, I'd go, like in a heartbeat, and then I'd go again, and then again, you
Yeah.
know. And he's like, well, you're overweight, can't send you. And I'm like,
Oh jeez.
all right, cool,
Yeah.
because we didn't get along. Like in
Yeah.
in the last podcast we talked about it.
Yeah.
And we had an XO, like he was tired of looking bad because of that. Even though I had 4.8 remarks,
Oh.
like 4.8.
Wow.
When I came back from Iraq, I had 4.9s.
Yeah.
The only reason I didn't is because I got in a fight because I beat up my corporal. Because I was telling you the story where he slapped the trash out of my hand.
Yep.
I kicked the shit out of him.
Yeah. Sometimes you make your own bed.
We were in Iraq,
Right.
and then my sergeant ended up like coming in and being like, hey, he's like, how dare you hit an NCO? Would you do that to me? And I said, Sergeant V, if you put your hands on me like he did, yes, I'd beat the fuck out of you.
Yep.
And he was like, well, he touched you? And I was like, oh, he didn't mention that, Sergeant V? Because we were at this, at this point I was like,
Yeah. You probably live it anyway. Still.
and so I was like, I wasn't being as respectful as I probably should have been.
Right.
And he was like, well, that's still inexcusable. And I was like, I don't care. I'd go stand in front of the CO and tell him this. And he's like, all right, good. We're going to go talk to the CO. And I said, good to go. And I told the CO the same thing. And I was like, if he ever touches me again, I'd beat the fuck out of him again.
Right.
And that's why I never picked up. But, I mean, that was...
There's no here nor there, man.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But we had a CO, and we ended up, like... He was just hard charging through the whole thing. And he's like... so we get to the part where we start grappling, and, he goes off and has a phone call or whatever. And he's kind of been writing me because, like, he's tired of looking bad,
Right.
And so we're sitting there, and then... so he doesn't understand. He sees somebody who has to do extra work,
Right.
and they're automatically lazy. They're fat bodies. They're this and
I'm
that.
curious what his background is.
And
I mean,
I'm not sure.
Not important. But
And so we were sitting there, and then so he thought, we're like, sir, do you want to go ahead and do some, grapple? And he was I think he was a black belt, and then he was like, oh sure, and he's like, oh sir, now normally what we do is we have somebody in the middle of the circle, and then we'll send somebody
basically
randomly.
bull in the ring.
Yeah, bull in
Yeah,
the
bull ring.
yeah. And so that's how we normally do it, or we have people pick somebody, and then instead of doing it, because you would do like 30 seconds, or whenever the instructor would like switch,
Right.
or you have somebody, and then you go for like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, until somebody
Dude, I
taps
wish
out.
it was 3 minutes.
or-
When I used to help out with that, it was 10 minutes
Yeah.
per. You're
It-
just like getting wrecked.
It would be
for 10 minutes.
It would be well. That's normally what we would do if it was
Right.
that. But if it was one-on-one,
Yeah.
it was usually like there's a reason why somebody's calling somebody out, so
Right.
we'd let it go out.
Oh, yeah.
And so it would last like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, till somebody gave up basically.
Right.
And we were sitting there, and he was like, well, and then he's like, I want to go against Lance Corporal Colburn, and I was like on the inside,
Oh, man.
I'm like, oh, you fucked up.
Yeah.
And I was like,
You done messed up, Aaron.
yeah, exactly. And I was like, I just looked at our McMap instructor, cool dude. He's the only guy I lost to. well, I spoilers.
Right.
But so, and I looked at him, and he was
Most
like,
of the map instructors, they do stuff on their off time too.
well, he was
so.
a marathon runner, so he had stamina for decades.
Well, right.
And so I looked at him, and he was like, he just gave me that nod, and I was like, I took my camel back off, and I was like, sir, do you want to start standing up or on our knees? Like, how do you want to do this? And he's like, well, we'll stand up. And I was like, okay. And I went to, I put my hand out. We shook hands, and I just looked over, and for him to blow the whistle. And as soon as he blew the whistle, I shot him for a double leg. I picked him up, slammed him down to the ground. I mounted him, and then he rolled to his back, and I was like,
Is this Christmas? When he rolled onto his stomach?
Oh yeah, he rolled onto his stomach and gave me his back, and I was like, Merry Christmas. I hooked him in, and I didn't even hesitate.
Oh, yeah.
I put him in there. I got him in a choke, and I just started going. I wasn't gonna, like, this is my time,
Right.
And I started squeezing, and he was trying to do he was trying to like stand up, and he was very prideful, so he didn't want to tap out. And I'm squeezing, and I'm looking, and I'm like he's gonna go to sleep,
Right.
And then so I transitioned to where I went under here and on the back of his head. I flattened him out.
Full choke.
Yeah. Well, because I was trying to, I wasn't trying to hurt him, but I was like, all right, cool.
Now, once you sink it in, you sink it in.
You're not going anywhere.
They're supposed to know.
Yeah.
You start feeling like you're going to black out, you tap. You don't
and that's what I did. So I was like, all right, I'm not playing around anymore.
Right.
And I synced it in, and I could feel him start to go like limp,
Man.
And then I kind of felt like a tap and then like a hand go, so I let him go, and then he kind of like got up and was like, yeah, good job, and I was just like,
probably like drunk.
Yeah.
After that.
I mean,
like, you know what I'm saying, when you sleep and you're just like, and then come back out.
Yeah. So I mean, I choked him out in seconds, because he thought it was going to be easy, and it was just like he was trying to prove a point,
Right.
And no blouses on, no rank, know. So,
dude, back in my day, you probably like back in my day.
Yeah.
Dude, we used to have guys so we used to do boxing. Like,
Yeah.
you had a problem with somebody, and that's what I used to do with my platoon too. Is so we used to do boxing. If you had a problem with somebody, you drop blouses.
Yeah.
There'd be no rank involved in it. Put on the gloves. Now, you're not sitting there punching people in the face or anything like that, but the platoon would be there and be like, all right, man, and they would kind of give you a ring so that you do it. And you're just like, all right, man, you guys, when you guys feel like you're you got the problem solved or something like that, you're gonna shake on it regardless. So you would shake, hey, get it all out, shake on it, have at it. And they would, and dude, God forbid if that dude was one of the guys with the golden gloves.
Yeah.
And the other guy didn't know anything, because you just seen people get the world rocked. But we had two stash sergeants literally do that when I was a Lance, because that's how it was back in the and I don't want to call it old corps, but since I came in back in the day, but back in 1990, my first unit, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, we had two stash sergeants, man, and they had an issue with each other. Those dudes took their blouse off, and the other way you do it besides boxing, if it's two platoon sergeants, like in this case, they walked out in the middle of the field, and it was just boom, 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 and it's funny because one of the guys was like, while he was taking his blouse off, he just goes, and bam, right? He didn't have his blouse off, he was able to get it, and just like clocked him right in the chest, and and he just freaking pummeled the guy, and so and then of course they're trying to go out in the field, so they didn't want any. Of course, all the junior guys are like, "Whoa, hey, what's going on here?" And they're trying to watch, but they're, it's supposed to be kind of a private thing. And when they come back, and they're good again. After that, so he used to solve problems, but then everybody wanted to get involved in that, and they're like, "Oh no, that's assault." And
it's not a. It was trying to be a personal thing, a one-on-one.
It's like a duel, you're dueling, but at the end of the day, no one actually died.
Well, and what happened is you get people who don't understand that, and then they get in the Marine Corps, and then they get their ass beat, and then they're like, I'm pressing charges.
Right.
And it's like you joined the wrong branch then.
No, not even so much branch, just in general. Like, hey, what are you even doing in the military?
Yeah.
But then again, you never know. I mean, you got some hardcore people in other branches too, but it is what it is. I think no matter where you're at, I mean, at some point there's got to be you're warrior first. Yeah. If you solve a problem in a way that I think I used to hate paperwork, man. I do everything in my power, never have to write paperwork. I mean, it's hardly a few times I did have to do it. It just left you no choice. But anytime I could get around the paperwork, I would have rather done that. If I could get a guy to do push-ups, even though they started doing the whole hazing thing, which I thought was dumb, because I mean, you want to ruin this guy's career
by writing up paperwork.
by doing paperwork.
On some bullshit.
Whereas the push-ups, you know, you get stronger.
You're just getting stronger. Yeah.
You know, or you know what we call a little bit of pain. Oh, we just get a little bit of pain.
Yeah.
That's the way I think the Marine Corps is gone. You know, because once you do boot camp, you really. I mean, that's why I think it was kind of fun, but because we can kind of get away with a lot more than a drill instructor can.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, but it had to be corrective, and you know, so if you're doing something, and of course I had sergeants, I had to watch them like, oh, did you do that? You know, kind of thing. But
well, we had kind of stuff like that because I worked with McMap, doing McMap. Like anytime I was also older when I joined. Like so, I joined at 19. I got hurt, you know, and then I ended up joining again at 21. So I'm 21 and there's 18-year-olds, you know, like I've already had a little bit more experience, you know. Right. And so, you know, by the time I hit the fleet, you know, I was about 22, almost 23.
Right.
So, you know, a lot of people, and then when I came back to my deployment, you know, I'm about 25 at this point, 24. Yeah. So a lot of the, you know, like I had sergeants and we were the same age, you know, so a lot of people would come up to me and be like, hey, you know, like, I have this issue, I have that issue, like it stays between us.
Right,
and I'm like, yeah, you know, your secrets die with me, you know.
Right.
And there were a lot of times where people are like, you know, this person's pissing me off, I can't stand it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, do you guys want to solve this? Like, I'll go talk to them, and if you guys want to solve it, we'll go do some McMap.
Right.
And we'll solve it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So we would go out to the pits, and people would be like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, McMap. You know, and people would, like, look and be like, oh, I've seen you do McMap, you know, like.
Right, right.
So they would, you know, just kick shit out of each other, or McMap each other.
Yeah, McMap each other.
And then be like, and then it would be like, are you fine? You know? And then if there was that one person who just who took it too far or whatever, it's like, all right, cool. Now you and I have a problem. Right. Because we were supposed to come out here, solve a problem. And now you're making it worse. Now you and I have a problem. And then that usually solved it, you know.
Right. Yeah, because no one wanted to go up that, especially after you just got one round with somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And so there were stuff like that, or you'd get the reefer monster.
Right. So
you'd go in there and you'd slip and fall, or you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And you would handle business, but it was definitely more few and far between.
Oh yeah.
Just because of, you know, like we said earlier, military politics.
Yeah.
Going
politics went down to the lowest level when it comes, especially when it comes to the military. I mean, regardless of either E1 all the way up to the E9s, there's politics in everything. And then and then of course there's you know, you had listed in the officers, and there was always that, you know, so there was politics between that, and you know, just the way a lot of it was leadership, but you know, but it's politics in terms of how they did stuff. So, oh yeah, no, that's crazy. That's funny though, because it brings back memories when you talk about that. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember days like that. You know, you always remember your good and your bad, and what's funny is you always remember the worst stuff more than you do the good stuff. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
Like when you're the most miserable, it makes you a harder person, but at the same time, man, you're like, God, this sucks so bad.
It like, you know, I'm sure everybody's drill instructor builds character. You know?
Oh yeah. Well, see, but my worst time that I ever had it wasn't even that. I was in Fuji.
Yeah.
I think I went to Fuji. I think twice, during my time. But one of those times we're out at Camp Fuji.
Yeah.
And we went out to the training area, and it rained on us for 3 days, and it was cold, wet, miserable. Like we couldn't go back to the rear. We only had that one set of uniform on, and it was soaked.
Yeah.
And we get up in the morning, it's freezing cold, and you're putting that wet stuff back on. Dude, I never forget it to this day. It was so miserable. So, yeah, you know, so like I remember, like I can still remember being cold.
Yeah.
You know.
I look back on those moments, like, because my worst time in the Marine Corps was about politics. It wasn't even about training or anything like that.
Oh yeah.
And so I look back and I remember those moments, like being in Yuma, like for 30 days with only 60 days left in the Marine Corps. Like, so I had to check out in 30 days.
And see, they don't let that happen anymore.
Yeah. And because I wasn't like, the gunny who was in charge of me, we didn't get along because he had a pet that was in the platoon, and the pet was a shitbag, and I called him out on it all the time.
Oh yeah.
And so, like, I worked, and I'd get off work, and then I'd go check out, or I'd go check out, and then I would have to be to work.
And you didn't have to do that. You could have just spent your whole time checking out.
Well, that's what they normally did for everybody else, you know?
Right.
And I felt really, my last day in the Marine Corps, they were like, oh, you got to be to work at 04.
See, politics, man.
And I was like, sure.
On your last day?
Yeah, my last day.
Oh, I would tell. Yeah,
so
I would know that.
I set my alarm for 8 o'clock. I got up. I had like a dozen missed phone calls. I went and picked up my DD214, and then after that, I got a call from the gun. He didn't get there until like 9 o'clock. So he called me directly, and I had his number in my phone. And he called me, and he's like, oh, you're supposed to be here at 04. And I said, who's this? And
Right.
he was like, oh, it's Gunny, whatever.
Yeah, you're DD214, so it doesn't matter.
And he was like, and I was like, oh yeah, what's up, man? And he was like, oh, so it's like that. Well, you know what? To make up for it, you got to come in for the rest of the day, and you got to be here tomorrow, at 04, and then work the rest of the day. And I was like, nah, dude, I don't think so.
Right.
And he was like, I'm gonna NJP your ass. Well, it's for those
Right.
non-judicial
punishment.
punishment.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you know what? I just picked up my DD214, so that's not gonna happen. And
Right.
He was like, oh, so as soon as you pick it up, you're gonna drop all your responsibility. And I was like,
You're not in anymore, man.
I was
You've
like,
got DD214 in your hand.
Yep. That's exactly what that means. I was like, I'm not gonna come into work and listen to you guys when I get treated like shit because I'm not one of your kiss asses.
Right.
He was like, how dare you talk to me? And I was like, okay, you know what?
You had a rough time, man.
I was like, you know what, Gunny, I'm sorry.
Oh, man. That's just terrible.
I was like, you know what, Gunny, I'm sorry. Go fuck yourself. And I hung up. I just hung up on him. And I went back to my place, and because
man, that's terrible.
I had a place on base, and I loaded up my U-Haul, and then that was it. I left.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, that's what you get for speaking your mind.
Yeah.
Speaking the truth.
Yeah, but you were already out though at that time.
Yeah.
Too, so.
Well, when you have a reputation for, you ask permission to speak freely, and then you keep it real.
I never ever let it. No, don't speak freely.
Yeah.
The only time I do that, like if we're in a room like this, and you're like, hey, I speak freely. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. But if you were like out in front of everybody else, you're like, hey, can I speak freely? No.
Yeah. Well, and then
do not do that.
That's always what I did. Is they were like, they would always be like, Colburn, what do you think about this? And I would just be like, permission to speak freely. Yeah. And a lot of times they'd say yes, because they were like, he's not going to say anything fucked up with everybody around, and I would just be like, bleh, like, I would be like, well,
just puke it out.
I would just because I'm not style. I don't have time, like I said,
Yep.
I was a little older than everybody else, so I didn't want to deal with all that, bullshit.
Yeah.
So like the quickest way to solve a problem is address that there's a problem.
That's true.
So I would straight come up and say that, and it would always come like that's not what they wanted to hear.
Right.
And then so I actually...
you know what I came up with is and that's the only reason why I was able to stay in as long as I did, was I learned the Jedi mind trick, man.
Yeah.
Because literally, like, you make it sound like when you came up with stuff, and it was like, I used to put it back on them. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, sir, we got to do a range and stuff like that. What do you think?
Yeah,
sounds good. That's a great idea, sir. I think we should run with that and make it sound like it's their, like, completely Jedi mind trick and make it sound like it's their idea. Well, and that's kind of like where, I think they kind of figured it out after a while. But I learned to, kind of put it to where ideas or something I said was their idea.
Well, when they said no, I was always like, when they would ask me, so what do you think about this? And then I'd ask and they'd say no. I'd be like, good, sir. And that would be it.
Right.
And they'd be like, well, so you think everything's, whatever?
Right.
Sure, sir. Like, right. I mean, at this point, you're basically muting me. So, okay, whatever you say, sure.
Right.
Oh man. Yeah. So like I said, like I never had any cool like higher ups to that point, because a lot of them were looking out for themselves.
Oh yeah.
And I ended up having almost a majority of the higher ups just looked out for themselves.
Oh yeah.
So it was one of those things where I'm too old to kiss ass at this point. I've never been an ass kisser.
Right.
And at this point, I don't see myself staying in, so I'm not going to kiss ass regardless. So it was just one of those like, hey, this is how it is, like.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, you get it all the way around too. So regardless, we all had those experiences, man. I just, for some reason, lieutenants were like the worst. Second lieutenants, because they're brand new. They're the worst one. You either had two stereotypes for lieutenant. One, the one that thinks he knows everything, and he's only been in for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That guy.
Yeah.
Or you get the one that is he knows what's up, and he's willing to learn it first
Yeah.
before he tries to step in. Those are the two different types. And of course, every time you get the one that like knows everything, you're like, oh, this is gonna be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same idea, man. You just like you try not to like you try to support him and everything, but a lot of the times
Yeah.
it just doesn't work out that way. Especially, you know, it's the same idea. What you got, you try not to speak too freely to them, but at the same time, you had to establish a relationship with them, so you had to tell them like, no, we can't do that.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
And,
It's not gonna
and
fly.
the worst thing is like, hey, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And of course they don't appreciate that too much. But at the end, when it does come back, like if they were one of the two, either they're gonna be like, we're gonna do this anyway. That's the one that knows everything,
Yeah.
or okay, well, what do you think we should do?
Yeah.
And then you tell them that, you're like, hey, let's do this. What do you think of that? And then so you have the two different types, but it's the same idea what you had to deal with.
Yeah.
And of course they rub that off on the lowers because
Mhm.
that guy who just doesn't care to barrel over everybody.
I think what I took away from a majority of these situations is there's a big difference between a boss and a leader,
Oh yeah.
and that also does reflect down to the junior leadership, and it also it teaches you that you can be tough as long as you're fair. If you're fair
Oh, yeah.
with people,
Oh yeah.
they'll respect you more than just being strict.
Right.
And I think that's the point that I took away from all of that is you however you conduct yourself will live in people's minds forever
Right.
until they pass away.
Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and it could either be a good experience or a bad experience, but it all depends on how you conduct yourself and how
Yeah.
you treat other people.
Right. I think in the end, though, no matter what, whether you had the most horrible experience, where you're like, I think it sounded like at the end of yours, you're having a horrible experience. I was having one close to my end.
Yeah.
And just hear, on and off. But the thing is like, in the end, man, I grew because of it, and
Yeah.
I'm a better person regardless. At least I can kind of, I can take the good and the bad, and my best day will never be as bad as my worst day.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
I think I learned from it too, but I learned from it more of I don't want to be like that, and I don't want when I saw people act like that in the Marine Corps, I don't want Marines I served with or served under me
Yeah.
to remember me like that.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
So I think that was the biggest
Right.
um,
Yeah, it's like what
learning
legacy.
experience.
Yeah, what's your legacy in terms of when you get out? That was one thing I thought too. Is like I hope when people remember me, they don't remember. I want them to remember me for
yeah.
being who I was, and being that dude. That guy helped me in ways that
Yeah.
that's the guy I want to be remembered as. I could care less the awards that I got, the the recognition of it. It's nice to get recognition every once in a while.
Yeah.
You didn't get that. That's the one thing that we suck at as Marines is, or just service in general. They just really suck at recognition in terms of all you needed was like, hey man, that's a great job, good job. And I used to try that myself and try to do that as much as I possibly. It's hard. It's hard to because we're that level that we want. That bar is set so high that sometimes people just don't want to. For me, if you ran a first class POT, good on you. If you're second or third, I still wouldn't be like, you're a dirtbag.
Yeah.
Because it's still passing. That's what the only thing that used to kill me about the Marine Corps. There's a second and third class for a reason.
Yeah.
If you're in the second or third class, okay, you're not a first class guy. So it's just gonna be,
Some people aren't built that way.
no, absolutely not.
Like
Especially when they with the dead hang pull-ups, man. Whew. Oh man, that's brutal.
I've got long arms. Like I said, I'm 6'4".
Oh yeah, well yeah. The
When
weight
I
too
jumped-
on top of that too.
When I
so-
jumped on the bar,
oh yeah,
most times I'd have to tuck my feet under because my
Yep.
feet would be on the ground.
yeah, because they'd hang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I would do pull-ups and they'd be like, well, you kicked off with your feet. I'm like, well, put a bar out here that's big enough for
Right.
me to dead hang, and I'll get
Right.
on it.
You'll hang on the rope. On the opposite course.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Nice.
I think the biggest reward for me being in the Marine Corps is actually after I got out,
Right.
because I had people who, my philosophy at work was, and this is how I was taught, is I'm gonna do it, you're gonna watch, and just watch. The second time, I'm gonna do it, and you can ask as many questions as you want.
Mhm.
The third time you're gonna do it, I'm gonna be standing next to you. You can ask me as many questions as you can.
Mhm.
The fourth time you do it, I'm just gonna stand there and watch. Don't ask me shit,
Yeah, right,
and I'm gonna watch to make sure you know what you're doing.
right.
And then if you don't, afterwards I'm gonna critique you on everything. You fucked up on this, and this, and then that's how I learned, and that's how I'm trying to help. Like,
Right.
and it was kind of I was kind of a hard ass sometimes,
Mhm.
but it was one of those things where you never know when when you're gonna be under pressure. So if you practice under pressure,
Right.
when it gets game time, you're not gonna buckle to that pressure.
Right.
And the biggest, I think, achievement that I got, from being in the military is like, I was hanging out at home one day, and I got a phone call,
Right.
and it was one of my buddies who went to corporal's course, and he trained under me, and then he was like, hey, like I just went in front of the board and everything, and I ended up getting the corporal of the corporal's course, and he's like, I have to thank you, because when it hit that pressure point,
Right.
he was like, it wasn't that bad. And I thought back of, why isn't this bad? Everybody's freaking out,
Right.
And he's like, why isn't it bad? And he's like, I remember I did harder stuff with Colburn. And he was like, and that's when it hit me, that training like that benefits in every situation, not only in your one field, but all the way around. And
Right.
at that moment, I was like, this is one of the proudest moments of my Marine Corps career was,
Yeah.
and I wasn't even in anymore.
Right. Right.
And it was just the fact that somebody was like,
Yeah.
recognized that, like,
Right. Right. And exactly it. Sometimes just getting recognition is nice. Does someone say something nice to you? Every
Yeah.
once in a while.
Yeah,
That's all it
definitely.
takes, man.
yeah,
Like all that crap on the wall, I could care less for.
Yeah.
I didn't put a lot of my rewards up. I just put my promotion things. That's all I really cared about.
Yeah.
I earned the promotions. I think that the awards thing was just the awards thing. And I got enough.
yeah.
I got
You
enough
got
of
a box
that.
over there.
Yeah, I had a box full of awards over there. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
They're just awards, But it's nice. It's nice, and I think we don't. That's one of the hardest things for leaders, even probably to this day, is give your guys recognition. Tell them when they're doing a good job. If they mess up, it's like you say, be consistent, but also be fair.
Yeah.
So, and that was one of the things I believed in was, you compliment or you give the attaboy in public.
Yeah.
And when you chewed somebody out, you did it in private.
Unless they deserved it in
Right.
public.
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
there's always those people that.
Well, there's
like,
always that one that kept pushing it, and I used to tell them like, but if I could keep it in private,
Yeah.
I mean, you really think about it, when you don't have the audience there, you get more out of the person when
Yeah.
you're able to fix them, because some of those guys are used to that herd mentality.
Yeah.
And when they're out there, you're not gonna embarrass them in front of
Yeah.
anybody else. So. Yeah, it's one of those things that if you did it right, if you did that in that retrospect by doing it in public all the time.
Yeah.
Because if you do it in public all the time, eventually they're gonna turn on you.
Yeah, I think it's just finding that line, because I didn't have the same authority or a lot of the same knowledge as you had, and it was one of those, you have to make a quick decision now, because
Right.
I don't want this to go up to the sergeant, the staff sergeant, the gunny, because then they're going to chew their ass, and then I'm going to get my ass chewed, because
Right.
why did I let it go on?
Right. It's happening. Right.
And I think
Yeah, it's
there's
true
ways
statement.
there's ways to get around it by just playing little stupid games,
Oh yeah.
like
that's one thing I was
Yeah.
good at. If I had to adjust off something, we could make the training out. Like you talk about the McMahon
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Marine Corps martial art thing is, we also I as an SOI instructor, that taught me
Yeah.
how to let's play the loophole game then. I'll figure something out.
Yeah, I think the best little fuck game I played was, we were in Yuma, and there was a dude who would just disappear for hours, and then come back, and he'd have the sleep in his eyes, and yeah. So one of the things, like my staff sergeant was like, he's like, I don't want to deal with it. Just go do something. Go make him do something. And I was like, cool. So we walked in the back there, and I was like yet again, I don't want to say this guy's name because I don't think he deserves recognition.
Yeah, we don't need to.
And I was like, hey, we'll just call him Jody. And I was like, hey, go over there, and I don't like the way those rocks look. Flip them over.
Oh yeah.
And we're in the desert. We're in Yuma, and there's hundreds of thousands of rocks.
Oh yeah.
He's like, which ones? And I was like, start from there and just work your way that way.
Right.
And then we were out there for hours,
Oh,
and he was just flipping rocks because I had stuff to do, you know,
Right.
like, so I was in the area watching him, and
Right.
you know, like, he would be like, oh, can I smoke? And I was like, no, it's not time to take a smoke break.
right.
I was like, I smoke too. We're not taking a smoke break.
right.
I don't smoke anymore, but
Right.
I did at that point, and I was like, no, well, you know, like, you'll take one when I take one. He's like, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom, and I was like, well, all right, cool. I have to go too, so we'll be battles, and we'll walk over there. And so I'd go in there, and he'd go into another porta john,
Right.
and then, you know, like, it was like, hey, if you finish peeing or whatever before I do, wait for me.
Mm.
And then he'd come out, and then I would be like, you know, like a minute or 2 minutes, like, hey man,
Right.
all right, let's go. You know, like, you've had enough time to do whatever you're doing.
Right.
And then we go back and it'll be like, all right, now continue flipping rocks. You stopped right there, you know, just point at a random rock, you know. But sometimes that physical ass whooping doesn't work for everybody.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes you got to do something else.
Well, exactly. Not everybody responds the same to pain.
Yeah.
You know, especially like that right there. There's the big three.
Yeah.
And that's what you always do to mess with somebody. Their pay, because that's
Yeah.
the whole reason why for NJP or non-judicial punishment was
Yeah.
you get pay taken. You start to remember like, oh crap, I just lost my half month's pay
Yeah.
for the next couple months. So your pay, your time, your
Mhm.
time off, especially, and you know, and of course some people just for physical response or pain.
Yeah.
You know, so you had those three areas. If you hit one of those three areas, most of the time, most people respond
Yeah.
one way or the other.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially time off. Oh man. Oh man. Someone messes your time off. Oh.
Well, especially like, so I was food service, which means I was a cook, which like, so we would work from 4 till
You guys
04
are crazy.
till
hours,
like
man.
1800, which is 6 o'clock
6
at night.
o'clock at night. Yeah.
And we'd have to work weekends too, because chow hall's got to be open on weekends. So we would
Oh, yeah.
rotate weekends off. So you start taking away our time off. You know, like, you could
Yeah.
work weeks straight without getting a day off.
Oh yeah.
And so it was one of those things like,
But
if
they
you
didn't
start,
they didn't give you like designated days off.
it depends. Like, if you had people deployed, you would work every other day,
Okay.
or you would work every day, but you'd work half days every day.
Right.
So you'd come in at 04, you'd get off at like 11 o'clock, and then the other watch would come in at 10:30,
Right.
and then they'd work till,
So do like a port and starboard.
yeah.
Or
And
left
then-
to right.
Yeah, and then it would be the opposite way around. So if you came in at 04 one day, the next day you would come in, yeah.
Right.
So you'd get off at you know, like 11,
Right.
and then the next day you'd come in at 10:30.
Right.
But you PT in the morning, and then, you know,
Right. Right. Well, that makes
So-
total sense, man.
and then you would rotate every other weekend off.
Yeah.
So you'd work like 10 days straight
Yeah.
for your day off.
I still say even with the worst, the best and the worst, man. I still miss it. I miss it, you know.
Yeah.
And if I could have done longer, I'd have stayed longer. Hell, if they let me go to another service, I would try another service. But you know,
Yeah,
you get the retirement, they're like, nah, we're done with you, man.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I feel the same way. If I could go back in, I'd go back in.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely. It's funny because no matter what job I do now, is like, you know, I've had so much experience doing. It's funny because, you know, I can do pretty much anything.
Yeah.
But if I try to go get a job for something like that, it doesn't recognize me for, you know, for the computer stuff, for example.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, man, I can do some crazy stuff
Yeah.
with some of these programs out there, and you know, all self-taught.
Yeah.
You know, thanks because I had kind of a high learning curve when you're, you know, you're getting pressure to make
You gotta do it on the fly.
rosters and doing
Yeah.
stuff, and you got to be able to.
You gotta
Yeah.
fill that role.
Yeah, you definitely got to make stuff happen, and if you don't make it happen, then you're getting your butt chewed, you know. So yeah, it's a learning curve, but I tell you what, it's definitely better for it. But I mean, it doesn't really translate over to the civilian side. I think a lot of our stuff that we ever did doesn't really translate over.
No, and I think that's one of the biggest issues with trying to get, like, a lot of vets have trouble getting jobs, is because how do you translate being an 03 into the civilian
You
world?
can't, and you can't even
You-
say cop, because I mean, yes,
Yeah.
like me, I was a law enforcement officer. I worked in the prison though, so I was a corrections officer. Some of it does translate, yes. Like McMatt translates well. It
Yeah.
works really well on when you have to defend yourself. Just like, you know, your physical fitness and everything else, and kind of
Yeah.
like, you know, the whole patrolling aspect.
Mhm.
Those kind of things, definitely helpful. But yeah, there was definitely not some things that didn't actually translate over either.
Well, like, you know, like I was saying, I was a cook. None of that translates over, because when you go to get a job as a chef,
Right.
they're like, well, what school did you go to? I was
Right.
like, well, I went to quartermaster school.
Right.
And they're like, where's that? And I was like, well, it's in Fort Lee, Virginia. And they're like, who's it accredited through? And I was like, well, the United States Marine Corps. And they're like, well, you have to go to
Right.
you
that's
have
not
to go
degree,
to
dude.
a school that we
Right.
approve of.
Uh,
And it's like, wait a minute, I have 4 years of on-the-job training.
right.
You know, like you're not going to get anybody coming out of school having the same,
No.
the same
No,
thing.
absolutely not.
And none of that extra stuff comes in either. You have a 300 PFT, yeah. So what?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's,
No one cares that you can run.
How are you gonna
physical
put
fitness
that
test.
on an application or?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you were a McMap teacher? Well, hey, what do you know? So
Yeah.
what? You know, it's very hard to make it equal something in the civilian world. Even though the veterans are going to be your probably hardest worker
Oh yeah.
in whatever business you hire. You know, it's one of those things where you got to give a vet a chance.
Right.
Give them a chance to prove themselves.
Oh yeah.
Because I guarantee if they have a little of experience, they're still going to work harder than anybody else that's there.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a true statement. I mean, there are people that are trying to hire, but if you ever look at the jobs that they're trying to hire for vets, you're like, a lot of the times they're not going to really jump on that. Like, oh yeah, I really don't want to, drive a vehicle around all day long.
Yeah.
And so it's all dependent, of course.
And even when you look on stuff like USA Jobs,
Right.
it's got to be like, oh yeah, we love vets, we want to hire vets, and then
Right.
it's like you have to have like 12 years of experience and then a master's degree
Yes.
or a
The
bachelor's
master's degree
degree.
kills
or,
me
like-
because it's like, dude, which guy are you looking for? Because
Yeah.
I mean, the only people who have that are the officers.
Well, and it's like you want 12 years experience and a master's degree, but none of my military career counts for any of that. Like
right.
because
Oh, yeah.
you can't equivalate, like 4 years of service into a master's degree.
No,
It doesn't,
it's not the same.
No.
Yeah, it's nice when those jobs are just like, hey, we just looking for the 4 years
Yeah.
experience or
Yeah.
in a certain field. But no,
Yeah.
it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Craziness. But yeah, no, I think it's just one of those things that comes with the job, I guess.
Yeah.
You know.
So we've been chatting for about 2 hours now, and I think this is a good place to.
Oh
To-
yeah. Yeah, we definitely went a little
to
off
kinda-
into
Yeah.
the weeds there a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the thing with when you're talking and enjoying yourselves, you get a little off track sometimes,
Oh, yeah.
and we're still new at this podcast thing, so
Yeah, I mean, well, I hope you enjoy what we're talking about. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
something we can't really translate and bring you, paint that picture for you from
Yeah.
what we did and our times in. But
yeah,
at the same time, it's one of those. Hopefully you can kind of relate to where we're coming from.
yeah,
And kind of see, as vets, we all have our own story. I mean, or stories in our case.
yeah,
That of things that we've been through. Our experiences are definitely something that you'll not see normally on the outside.
yeah, definitely. And I think with our first few podcasts, we're just trying to let you know who we are, so that way you can kind of like just get a little bit of information about us, so you can kind of understand where we come from when we start talking about other things and start doing more, in-depth interviews with whoever we come across.
Right.
Because we have some things lined up. But we just want to kind of get our first few interviews about us, why we're doing this, and where we come from.
Right. Yeah, we definitely want to kind of bring our veteran side to it, but at the same time kind of relate it so that you all can kind of get a feel of what we're about as both veterans and what we are in our communities. I mean, really, we do things different than we did when we were in the Marine Corps, but in the heart of the matter for us, we're still always going to revert back to our training or just our experiences in terms of our service.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And then we're gonna get other podcasts too. We're waiting on our other compadre to get his podcast done, and then that'll be the three of us. And then we're gonna start getting into other topics. I don't want to name anything yet.
Well, the good news for you when you do bring him in, he was in the Air Force, so it should be like a 10-minute total. No, I'm just messing. Who knows what he did, but
yeah, good guy.
I wouldn't mind. I look forward to trying to hear what his side was because I don't get too much perspective about the Air Force.
Yeah, I mean we've already done 2 podcasts on the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Different experiences, completely different experiences, but
Absolutely.
a lot of the same bullshit.
Yeah. We kind of
Well, bullshit is in good and bad.
Well,
It
absolutely, yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean like it's shitty. You know.
Right, right. Same blood, same mud.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's basically a saying that we use there.
Yeah.
So yeah, oh yeah. So we've been around, and we can always relate to what another Marine has done.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
because we've probably been through it too, one way or the other.
Some form of it, yeah.
Yeah, so some form of way.
Yeah.
So so eventually we'll get him in here, and hopefully we can get another perspective.
Yeah, on a different side of the military. So, but yeah, like saying earlier, I hope you guys appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right.